What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about the Ultimates, the original Ultimates from the original Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, in our last full story, we had talked about Mark Millar's Ultimates, which was Ultimates 1 and Ultimates 2. But there was a third Ultimates that was written by Jeff Lowe, which honestly is some people's least favorite Ultimate story, but it is part of the original trilogy that all led into Ultimatum. And so here is all three Ultimates in one big video. I do hope you enjoy. Okay, so I kind of want to go back and recover the Ultimates from the Ultimate Marvel Universe, the original Ultimate Marvel Universe. And the reason why, because I feel like personally, I can do a better job than I did in the past when it comes to retelling the stories of the Ultimates from the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, you have to remember, when it comes to the Ultimate Marvel Universe, it was built in a way where you had to think about our world. What would happen if heroes had appeared in our world? What direction would our world go to if we had heroes around the board just flying around trying to do different things? And that was what the Ultimate Marvel Universe was like. It was more realistic, more grounded than the main Marvel Universe. And so when it came to the Ultimates, they were very different from their main Marvel Universe counterpart, but it did give us some interesting storylines. Some were good and some were, they were something. But today's video is going to be Ultimates Volume 1, issues number 1 through 6. I kind of want to see you guys get a taste of what the Ultimates were like when they first appeared in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, when it comes to the first chapter for today's video, it solely focuses on Captain America. We don't really get the chance to see other members of the Ultimates just yet, except for Tony Stark. And even then, we only see Tony for like 2 or 3 pages. Now, getting back over to Steve Rogers, we do pick up in the year 1945, and we do see Steve still fighting in World War II, and this is going to begin the process of moving him over into the present day. Now, when it comes to Steve Rogers, we do learn that most of the men in the military don't really trust Steve at all because they feel like he's only here as a way to trick young men back at home to join the military to fight in this war. But the ones who had fought along Steve multiple times, like Bucky, they tell the rest of the men, no, Steve has never failed a mission, and he's not going to fail this one either. And so you have Steve and his crew get ready to jump into the next battle. Now, when it comes to Steve Rogers, we do learn that his next mission is to stop Germany from being able to win the war. You see, when it comes to Germany, they have a missile, a nuclear missile. If that missile hits the US, then Germany wins the war. And so when it comes to Steve, his main goal is to stop that missile. But unfortunately, by the time he walks into the room, the missile was already launched into the air. Now, luckily for Steve, he was able to jump onto the missile before it left the building. But now he knows that he's not going to make it, that this is going to be his last mission. And so he calls out to Bucky to tell Bucky, hey man, listen, I am not going to make it at all. This is a goodbye. I wish you very well. And so you have Steve pull out a grenade. That grenade explodes, and then the nuclear missile also explodes. And you have Steve just fall straight into the Atlantic Ocean. leaving us wondering what could possibly happen to him. But it's very similar to the main Marvel Universe Steve Rogers in some areas. But either way, there goes Steve. But then we jump over to the present day and we pick up with Tony Stark. And we see Tony and his crew currently trying to climb Mount Everest. But then you have Tony tell every single member of that crew that he is about to go in a new direction in life. And tells everyone they all have been reassigned to New York, to Manhattan, to work on a new project. And then we're left to wonder what could be this new project that he is talking about. But then we dive into the second chapter where we pick up with Bruce Banner having lunch with Nick Fury. Now, this lunch is really important for a lot of different reasons. The first is that you had this book doing a callback to Ultimate Marvel Team Up #2, where you had Spider-Man fight against the Hulk when the Hulk had attacked New York. And so when it comes to Nick Fury and Bruce Banner dinner, well, their restaurant has the perfect view of where the Hulk had attacked last time, and that area still being repaired. Now, apparently it has been a few months where now Bruce Banner is constantly being tested by the American government to make sure that he no longer has the ability to turn into the Hulk. Now, we also learned that Nick Fury had just been promoted to the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, this is really huge because it leads into our next reason for this dinner. It's Nick telling Bruce, hey, the American government, the president, the military, they all agree it's time to relaunch the Super Soldier Program. We want you to try again to recreate the Super Soldier Serum because it was the reason why Bruce had turned into the Hulk. He had created a serum before, believing he finally cracked the code, but unfortunately he did not, and he turned into, well, the Hulk. But you have Nick saying, hey, I'm going to bring you back in because all the tests proved that you are clean. There's no longer a Hulk inside of you, but I want to tell you, you have been demoted. You're not the person in charge of this program. You're now the second person in charge. Now, we pick up with the Wasp and also Hank Pym, and we kind of find out that these two guys have also been recruited into the new program that Nick Fury is trying to launch. Now, we already know it's going to be a superhero program, but when it comes to Hank Pym, around his time in Ultimate Marvel, he had been working on a lot of different projects, but the one project that got S.H.I.E.L.D's eye was his Giant Man project to be able to grow in size. And so you having S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury say, hey, we are going to move you two guys over to New York into a better lab so that you are able to continue that project and hoping you can finally complete it. Now, you also have Hank Pym mention the idea that these two guys are going to join the superhero team, but so is Iron Man. And that is really huge. And the reason why, because apparently at first, Iron Man was not going to join the the Ultimates program. And that's the big question for Nick Fury. Why did Iron Man change his mind? Because again, he told Nick Fury and the American government, there is no way that you'll have my Iron Man suit part of some superhero team, but then out of nowhere, he changed his mind. Now, we also kind of find out another reason why he was in Mount Everest 4. He was working on a brand new Iron Man suit, the one we are currently seeing. Now, when it came to the Iron Man suit, this one right here in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, I honestly did not like it that much, but hey, it wasn't my choice. But either way, when it comes to Nick Fury, he asks the question and Iron Man answers. He says, the reason why I want to help because I thought it would be a good idea to see the American government, the American military, and also billionaires finally coming together and try to help save the world instead of trying to bleed it dry. I'm trying to be a better example of what billionaires should actually be doing when it comes to their money and power. And Nick Fury kind of likes that answer, but you can tell there is another reason why Iron Man wants to join the team. Now we have to shift our focus back over to Bruce Banner, but also the Wasp, so that we are able to learn a tad bit more of information about Bruce. You see, we kind of find out that Bruce was engaged to Betty Ross, but they had broken up. Now, here's the thing, because we're left to believe the reason why him and her broke up is because she took some kind of test to see if their relationship was toxic. And apparently, Bruce was a very toxic person in the relationship. And so she had no choice but to go ahead and leave. Now, we also kind of find out that Betty and the Wasp used to be roommates back in college, but it was only for a short period of time. Now we kind of find out the building that Bruce and the Wasp are walking into is going to be the base for the Ultimates down the road, but also it contains the labs that our heroes are going to work out of. Now when it comes to Bruce and the Wasp, when they walk in, they see Hank working on the Giant Man experiment once more, except this time he's testing it on himself. Now we do learn that there is a limit that he is allowed to grow to, and that is 60 feet tall. We also learn in the possibility there is a secret to his serum that he does not want the world to actually know. But here's the thing, if he's able to pull off this experiment, then the American military can take his project and then send in an army of giant men to help them win wars. And so once you have Hank be injected with his own serum, we do see that he is able to grow in size up to 59 point something, right up to almost 60 feet tall. But it worked, and he is perfectly okay. And for Bruce, it hurts him to see this because Hank Pym was able to pull off one of his experiments, and Bruce cannot do that himself because he has been working on the super soldier serum for years. But then he gets a call, and this call could possibly help him a lot because you have Nick Fury say, hey, listen, I think I could help you finish the super soldier program because you're not going to believe what we just found. We found Captain America and we are unfreezing him at the moment. This is great for us and for you. Now, as we dive into the third chapter, we do pick up with Hank Pym and the Wasp, where you do have the young couple being able to spend some quality time with one another, but at the same time, they're still testing out a few things when it comes to Hank Pym being Giant Man. So, for example, his suit, so they have something to wear when he's out there fighting against different super villains. And honestly, that's a good idea because I'm pretty sure the world is not really ready to see a 60-foot tall naked man running around. But then out of nowhere, you do have the Wasp get a call from Nick Fury saying, hey guys, we need you back at the base now. And so we have to jump back over to the main base for the Ultimates. And you have Bruce, Nick, and Tony waking up Steve Rogers. And this is a huge moment for Steve because once he wakes up, they tell him everything he needs to know about the idea that one, they won the war, but two, that war took place 50 years ago. Hey man, you're now in the year 2002. Sorry, but hey, here we are now. And for Steve, it's just too hard for him to process that. He's kind of like, there's no way you're going to tell me that I was frozen in time for over 50 years. There's no way. And so you have Steve Well, try to break out of the base. He actually attacks Nick, Tony, and Bruce. Now, Bruce cannot turn to the Hulk because, again, they made sure to take the Hulk out of him. And so, unfortunately, it does look like Steve might be able to get away and just run into the city until he is stopped by Giant Man, who had just came back to the base in time to see what in the world was going on. But now he knows. They got Steve Rogers. Now, this leads into one of the hardest moments for Steve Rogers. The idea of going to pay a visit to Gail, the woman he loved back in the 1940s. But we kind of find out after he had supposedly died, she moved on. She got married to Bucky, his best friend. Now, you would think, okay, Steve should be mad. His best friend married his girl. But no, he's not mad. He's actually happy because Bucky was able to give Gail a life. They had children. They had grandchildren. He took care of her. He loved her. It's great for Steve to see that Bucky and Gail were together. But the problem is when Steve goes over to pay them a visit, Bucky is happy to see Steve. But Gail, she does not want to see Steve at all because she does not want Steve to see her as an older lady. When he left, she was young and beautiful, and now she feels like she's old and ugly. But you have Steve kind of like, I don't care. I just want to see you. But she does not want to see him. And so he has to leave. Now, you then have Nick Fury take Steve Rogers over to a nearby cemetery. Now, when they arrive, we kind of find out that it's Nick Fury informing Steve Rogers what happened to every single family member of Steve Rogers when he was gone for 50 years. His mom died, his dad died, his brother died. The only person he has left now is a niece who moved to Idaho with her husband. And so Steve said, you know what? Let her be, because she doesn't even know who I am, because I died, or supposedly died, and I was gone for 50 years. I'm technically on my own now. But now we jump over to this event where you have Nick Fury and Betty Ross about to walk into. Now, when it comes to Betty, we do learn that she is the PR person for the Ultimates. And that is really important for this section because we do learn that we now pick up with a launching event. It's the idea of telling the world what the American government, what its SHIELD is trying to do to put together a superhero team. Steve Rogers, Hank Pym, the Wasp, and Tony Stark. That's really it. Now, you do have Tony mention another member to the team that he is trying to recruit, and that would be Thor. But he'll come later on. But the whole point of this is to show the world what the American government and SHIELD is trying to do. To show the people of America that, hey, we're putting together a superhero team to protect this country. And this is really huge. Now, we do see Tony Stark having an interview with Larry King. Now, this interview is really important because it's Larry King pointing out one big question. What is the point of the Ultimates? Because if you look at it right now, so far the American government has spent $50 million to just build you guys a base. And other $1 billion were used as a way to pay for every single person's salary who works for SHIELD, including you guys. But here's the problem though. So far as a team has been put together, you guys have not caught a supervillain. You guys have not handled any kind of war situations. Bruce Banner was not able to crack the super soldier serum with the blood samples of Steve Rogers. If you look at it, there's no actual point for the Ultimates. You are wasting America's money. Now for Tony, it's more of, but here's the thing. We're trying to prepare ourselves for the possible future of many different supervillains popping up left and right. Now, by this point in Ultimate Marvel, they only had technically one supervillain, and that would be Magneto. The other ones like Green Goblin and maybe like Doc Ock weren't as big as Magneto, who was trying to cause havoc across the entire country. And so for Larry King, he's saying, hey, listen, I get it. We already had one, but how do you know we're going to have more? And what if you guys are the problem? What if you guys are the reason why we have more and more supervillains popping up left and right to attack America? Can we actually trust the Ultimates? But getting back over to Steve Rogers and the Wasp, we see the Wasp buying Steve a bunch of clothes so that he's able to fit in with the present time. But also she's kind of trying to build some kind of friendship with Steve Rogers that could play out in different ways down the road. Now, when it comes to Steve, we do learn that he did move back into his old neighborhood. Now, when it comes to the Wasp, that was a very bad idea because his old neighborhood is very rough. It's not really a safe area for him or possibly other people as well. But for Steve, he said, I grew up here. I want to stay here because this area is a part of me. Except when they get back to his apartment, he comes to find out somebody has broken into his apartment and stole a few things as well. Now we do get reminded that Betty Ross is the PR person for the Ultimates, and she's very upset at the moment because one, Tony Stark is away on some kind of space trip. Steve Rogers in the city right now trying to hunt down the kids who attack his apartment, and the Wasp is helping out with that. Hawkeye is supposed to be a member of the team, but he did not show up, and Thor still has not joined the team at all yet. And so for Betty, she's very upset because she had called in a bunch of reporters, and the only person she can show off at the moment of the team is Giant Man, and that's really it. The rest of the team is far away, and this hurts the image of the Ultimates even more. Now, we also get a better look of the relationship between Betty and Bruce. And for me personally, it's just her constantly talking down to Bruce. Now, yes, he did mess up by turning himself into a Hulk, but it seems like there are other things that really did bother her when it came to Bruce Banner, and she is constantly attacking him for those different reasons. Now, something else I do want to mention about the Ultimate Marvel Universe is that it was built in a way of saying, what if heroes appeared in today's world, in our world? And so the idea that you have Bruce and also Nick going out of their way to try to recruit Thor is wild and crazy, because it's the idea that how in the world are we going to have an actual god on Earth just walking around so freely? Now, I should also mention that when it came to the origin of Thor, we were not really given any kind of information about him until his own Ultimate Thor miniseries, which I did cover, and I do say you should go over there and watch that video to get the full origin of the character. But around this time in Marvel Comics, no one knew the actual origin of Thor. It was just that he's some dude walking around with a hammer claiming that he is some god, but everyone else around him does not believe in the idea that he is a god. And so you have Nick and Bruce coming out of their way and trying to recruit Thor, except he says no. And the reason why he says no, because he believes that Nick, Shield, and the American government are all just bad people. Yes, you're telling the world right now this superhero team is being used as a way to protect the country from super villains, but sooner or later down the road, you are going to use that superhero team to help you win wars across the world. And that right there is a huge problem, because sooner or later, you guys are going to kill innocent people. And so Thor says, no, I am not going to join your new ultimate superhero team. Now, we jump back over to the base of the Ultimates, and this is going to lead into the beginning of the return of the Hulk in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, because we do pick up with Nick, Tony, Hank, and also Janet. Now, those four characters, they are currently talking about the idea that down the road, there could be a movie about them, and which actor or actress could possibly play them in those movies. But when it comes down to Bruce Banner, they give them different actors as a way to make fun of him. Now, he's not in the room just yet until the very end. And when it comes to Hank and Nick's last couple of jokes, Bruce hears it, and it makes him very upset because the whole point of the joke was Bruce was not able to crack the super soldier serum. It has been weeks, and we have Steve Rogers now, and Homeboy still cannot crack it, and that is a huge problem. Now, later on that night, we do pick up with Bruce calling up Betty Ross. Now, Betty, she's on a date right now with Freddie Prinze Jr. She's trying her best to make different kinds of deals as a way to help build out the popularity of the Ultimates. But when she gets that call from Bruce, at first, she's kind of upset until he tells her, shut up and listen. I made a mistake. I gave myself my own version of the super soldier serum. Now remember, the last time he took that, he turned to the Hulk. And so right now, it's about to happen again. He is about to turn into the Hulk, and that is a huge problem. Now, he tells Betty why he did it for. He said, listen, I got tired of the idea that many different people out there were talking down about me, saying that I'm not good enough to be able to crack the code for the super soldier serum. But at the same time, I got tired of hearing how having the Ultimates is basically pointless, that we are wasting the American government's money on this program. But now I'm going to show the world there is a reason why we need the Ultimates. I am going to turn myself into the Hulk and allow the Ultimates to fight me in front of a crowd of people. And that will show the world, yes, we need the Ultimates for situations like these. And so he hangs up the phone. He passes out. Now, luckily for him, or at first, luckily for him, you do have an ambulance come by to take him away. But as they're taking him to a nearby hospital, he turns into the Hulk. And the last page of this chapter is the Ultimates getting ready to go out there to fight against the Hulk. Now, around this time, you only had 4 members: Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, Giant Man, and the Wasp. And that's it. And so it's kind of like, can these 4 heroes actually take down Ultimate Hulk? And so you have the whole entire 5th chapter be used as a way to see the Ultimates try their best to stop the Hulk. Now, when it came to Bruce Banner, he knew that he was going to turn into the Hulk. And so he left behind a cure in his lab for the Ultimates to find to hopefully use against him as a way to stop him. But the problem is they have to get close to him, or at least calm him down after getting close to him. Now they send in Giant Man at first, and you would think, okay, Giant Man might have an advantage here. No. The Hulk teaches Giant Man a lesson by saying, you are nowhere on my level at all. And you have the Hulk, who's more savage than the main Marvel Universe counterpart, trying to kill off Giant Man, trying to rip his head off. But luckily, Iron Man flies in to take the Hulk somewhere else. Now, like I said earlier, I didn't really like the Iron Man suit in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. This model right here. Later on, he will have better models. But the main reason why I did not like his armor suit is because it wasn't as powerful as his main Marvel Universe counterpart. And I do understand that this was the early days of Ultimate Iron Man in the world of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, and on top of the idea that we are supposed to believe what would happen if heroes appeared in our world when it came to the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And so when it comes to Iron Man, he's trying his best to throw out different weapons on Hulk, but none of those weapons can properly take down the Hulk. And then his armor suit is constantly losing power at a very fast rate. And so he needs somebody else to step in for him. And so you have the Wasp use her tatas as a way to distract the Hulk. Now, the Hulk follows her over to where Steve Rogers is at. And now it's up to Steve to bring down the Hulk. Now, Steve knows that he really can't go toe-to-toe with the Hulk for a very long period of time. But he also knows that he only needs to hold the Hulk off long enough to allow the Wasp to inject the cure into the Hulk's body. Except when it comes time to inject the cure, well, the the needle breaks. And so there goes that plan. But Steve Rogers, he has other plans up his sleeve. But luckily for Steve Rogers, somebody else does step in to give him more time to hopefully work that plan out. And you have Thor appear. Now, when Thor appears, let's not forget, he did tell Nick and Bruce that he will not join the Ultimates if they're going to just be going around the world attacking other countries who are possibly enemies to America. But he did say that he'll step in to fight against super villains. And currently, the Hulk is a super villain. Now, this is Thor thinking that because he is a god, he should be able to take down the Hulk. It's not him trying to buy Steve more time to make a new game plan. It's him saying, no, I am going in for the killing blow to hopefully take down the Hulk. Now, I won't kill him, but my goal is to have him go ahead and give up for us. Except Hulk's kind of like, dude, your attack did do some damage to me, but I'm not going to give up. Let this battle continue on. Now, before you have the Hulk be able to beat down on Thor, we kind of find out that Steve Rogers does have another plan that could possibly bring down the Hulk. And he says, hey Hulk, I know what you want. You want Betty. You want Freddy. They're both currently in that chopper right there that's leaving the area. If you want to get them, you got to go up there to get them. And so you have the Hulk go to a nearby building to jump off that building to hopefully get to Betty. Now you're probably wondering, why in the world would Steve Rogers make Betty and also Freddy bait for the Hulk? Well, inside the head of the Hulk is the Wasp, and she does use her ability to hit a part of his brain, the Hulk's brain, that turns off the Hulk persona, turning Hulk back into Bruce Banner. And so by the time he gets back down to the ground, he's just regular Bruce Banner again. Now, when it comes to Bruce, he is begging for forgiveness. And you have Steve say at first, hey man, listen, I understand why you did this for. Listen, man, you are most definitely part of the team. We couldn't be the Ultimates without you. And then you have Steve Rogers just kick Bruce right in the face to knock him out. And Steve walks away and calls up Nick saying, hey, he's down. Now, can we all go home? Now, as we jump into the final section for today's video, I do want to shift our focus over to Betty Ross because we do pick up a few hours after the incident. Now, yes, you do have the Ultimates going out of their way, making sure that the innocent people who were affected by the Hulk incident are okay, but at the same time kind of enjoying being the popular superheroes who are so loved by the people they just saved. When it comes to Betty, though, Betty admits that she was in the wrong because as we saw in this entire video, she was talking down to Bruce and she kind of feels like she is responsible for Bruce retaking the super soldier serum and turning into the Hulk once again. But at the same time, she kind of likes the idea that he went that far to just get back with her. Now, with her being the PR person of the Ultimates, she does tell Nick, hey, don't worry. I'm going to spin this in a way where we actually had a Hulk go on a rampage and we had to use the Ultimates to save the day. And I'll make sure to leave out the idea or the fact that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. Now, I kind of want to skip over a few pages and jump into the last two sections of the story that really matter a lot when it comes to us diving into Volume 2 in our next video. So, when it comes to Tony Stark, he does invite every single member of the Ultimates over for dinner to celebrate the idea that they were able to work together as a team and take down the Hulk. Now, this is really great for Steve, Thor, and also Tony because they are able to build a bond with one another that is going to carry over to later books down the road in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. But it's also the moment where you have each hero kind of explain why they're part of the Ultimates. Like, why are they here for? We already know why for Steve and also for Thor. But we still had no idea for Tony. I mean, yes, we got an idea earlier, But we find out his actual reasoning for being on the Ultimates because he's dying. He has a tumor on his brain, and that tumor is going to kill him in 6 months or possibly 5 years. So why not go out of your way to make sure before you leave the world that you are being one of the greatest men in the world by being a great superhero? Now we jump over to Hank and the Wasp. Now I'm going to warn you guys, this is going to be a very rough topic here because we're going to talk about assault. You see, when it comes to Hank and also the Wasp, they were also invited over to Tony's dinner, but they didn't show up. And the question was, why? Well, we kind of find out why in this section right here. You see, when it comes to Hank, he feels embarrassed about the idea that he wasn't as useful as the rest of the team when it came to stopping the Hulk. And so he feels very embarrassed about it. Now, when it comes to the Wasp, she tries her best to cheer up her husband, but he takes her words in the wrong way. In a way of like, oh, look at you. You're now picking on me, making fun of me. And I bet that you want to sleep with the other men on the team like Tony, Steve, Thor, and whoever else. Now, this argument gets even worse because we do kind of find out that the Wasp is actually a mutant. You see, we kind of find out that it was thanks to her blood sample that he was able to create his giant man serum. Without it, most likely, he would never been able to complete the actual project. Now, when it comes to the Wasp and also Hank, their argument gets so bad, they begin to fight against each other, punching and kicking and throwing objects. Now, Hank did throw the first punch, so Homegirl is just trying to defend herself. Now, the fight gets even worse when you have the Wasp shrink down to her wasp size to attack Hank that way, except Hank goes out of his way to grab bug spray. Now, when it comes to the Wasp, she is a mutant. She's a human wasp character, and so with that bug spray, it actually infects her in so many different kinds of ways. Her human side, but also her wasp size as well. And so she has to hide underneath the desk, except Hank does not stop there. He then uses Ant-Man helmet that he has been working on to call in a bunch of ants to now attack the Wasp. And so by the end of the book, he realized that he went too far. He beat his wife. He basically poisoned his wife with bug spray and then used the ants to beat up on her. He went so far that it's going to lead into some more problems for the Ultimates in the next video. Okay, so to continue our coverage over the Ultimates, we do pick up with Volume 2. Now, Volume 2 does pick up a couple of days after the ending to Volume 1. Now, when it came to Volume 1, we had saw Bruce Banner take the new version of the Hulk serum, which of course turned him into the Hulk once again. Now, once he was the Hulk, he went on a rampage, killing off hundreds of people in Manhattan. Now, the reason why he had taken the new serum is because he wanted to give the Ultimates something to fight. Let me explain. You see, when it came to the American government, Nick Fury, and also S.H.I.E.L.D., they were the ones who had put together this superhero team as a way to protect the country, but to also go after super villains. But here's the problem. You see, you had the people of America begin to question the American government in the idea of, do we actually need a superhero team to protect the entire country? Now, the concerns of the people really showed once word got out that the American government has spent $25 billion on this one project. Just this one project. And for a lot of people, they felt like that money could have been used in other things the country currently needs. And so when it came to Bruce Banner, he felt like, okay, you know what? If I turn into the Hulk, I know that Nick Fury will send in the Ultimates to stop me. And once they do stop me, the world can see that yes, we do need a superhero team for different kinds of situations like this one. And so at the end of Volume 1, we did see the Ultimates being able to stop the Hulk. And Bruce was right, because now you have the people of America happy about the idea they do have a superhero team to handle those kinds of situations to protect the country. Now, what really did help out the Ultimates was Betty Ross. You see, Betty Ross is the PR person for the Ultimates. She was able to make sure that word did not get out that Bruce Banner was the Hulk, which honestly is a great thing, because if the American people had found out that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s own scientists had taken a serum to turn into the Hulk to give the Ultimates a reason to fight, it's going to look bad for the American government, for S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, and almost anybody else who is involved with the Ultimate Project. Now, here's the thing, because now Bruce is locked away deep inside the base of the Ultimates. Now, once Bruce finds out that, hey, the world does not know that he was the Hulk, he believes that he can leave, because the last time he turned into the Hulk, they were able to cure him, to get rid of the Hulk persona. But because he had taken a new version of the Hulk serum, well, now him and the Hulk are permanently bonded to one another. And so S.H.I.E.L.D., the American government, and Nick Fury, they're very concerned about the possibility of him turning into the Hulk once again. And to make sure that he can't, he has to stay locked away forever. But now I want to shift our focus over to Steve Rogers, who is currently going out of his way to show respect to different families who may have lost a loved one in the Hulk incident. Now, while doing that, he runs into Bucky and Gale. Now remember, Gale and Steve dated back in the 1940s, but after he had disappeared in 1945, Gale married Bucky. But either way, the last time Steve tried to see Gale, she did not want to see him at all, because she did not want him to see her as an old lady. But now she is okay seeing Steve, and it's kind of great to see Steve being able to have some friends from his past. But while you had the three characters trying to make plans with one another, you have Nick Fury walk over to Steve and say, hey, we have another problem we have to talk about. And that other situation is the Wasp, because we have learned back in Volume 1 that Hank Pym is an abusive husband. You see, back in Volume 1, he felt embarrassed about what happened in the Hulk battle, because he was the only team member who was easily taken out by the Hulk. The rest of the team was able to hold their own and work together to take down the Hulk. And so because of that, he was very embarrassed and felt like everyone wants him off the team. Everyone is making fun of him. And so when it came to his conversation with the Wasp on the previous night, he felt like she was also making fun of him. And so he attacked her, beat down on her, and did so many different horrible things to her that now she is in the hospital. Now, we also learned from Betty Ross in this section is that that was not the first time that Hank has beaten the Wasp. Apparently back in college, when Betty was the Wasp's roommate, she has seen Hank attack her so many times. And the question is right now, why did she keep going back to him? But no one has the answer for that question. And this is Betty telling both Tony and Steve about the past. And the entire time you have Steve showing that he is very upset with Hank, and he wants to find Hank right now. Now, we jump back over to Nick Fury, and this is where we learn that Nick Fury has two Ultimates teams. You see, the first one, Steve Rogers, Giant Man, the Wasp, and Iron Man, and even Thor, that's the public team. That's the one the public knows about. But he has another team, a Black Ops team, that no one knows about, and that would be Black Widow, Hawkeye, and two other characters who are supposedly mutants. And those characters go around the world to handle different kinds of missions without the world actually knowing. And we see that Black Widow and Hawkeye are about to go on a mission right now. But before you have Black Widow being able to give us more information, you have Steve wonder, where in the world is Steve Rogers? And we see Steve Rogers in the computer room using all the different satellites available to locate Hank Pym. Because like I said earlier, Steve wants to pay Hank a visit. And when I say pay him a visit, I mean Steve wants to beat the living you-know-what out of Hank. But now we are going to shift our focus back over to Black Widow and also Hawkeye. Now, when it comes to Black Widow and Hawkeye, like I said earlier, they're part of the Black Ops division for S.H.I.E.L.D. And they're currently on a mission with one another, but they're also working alongside with an army of soldiers who work for S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. Now, you have everyone about to attack this office building, but I really do like this section a lot because it really shows that Black Widow and Hawkeye are best friends. Now, if you have read every single Ultimate story, you already know that even though Black Widow and Hawkeye are best friends in this storyline, well, in Ultimates 2, that goes completely out the window. But either way, you do have Black Widow and Hawkeye and the soldiers being able to attack this office building, killing off every single person inside the building. Now, you're probably wondering, hey, Fresh, why are they doing that for? Well, you see, every single person belongs to a hidden organization that Steve Rogers was fighting back in 1945. And this is going to be very important for the rest of the chapters for this volume. But either way, you do have Black Widow and Hawkeye and their soldiers being able to take down every single person just like that. But then you have Hawkeye and Black Widow head back over to the main base of the Ultimates, where they are introduced to the rest of the team, the public team. And we kind of find out that they have been promoted to the public team. So Black Widow and Hawkeye will now be fighting alongside with Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Giant Man, and also the Wasp. Now, I did say earlier there were two other members who were part of the Black Ops team, and we kind of find out it was Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. But they're going to stay on the Black Ops team for a lot of different reasons. One, because they're mutants. Around this time in Ultimate Marvel, mutants were not really loved at the moment. And two, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch are children of Magneto. And when it comes to Magneto, he was a well-known bad guy in the Ultimate Marvel universe who had actually kidnapped the president's daughter in an earlier Ultimate X-Men storyline. And so it's possibly best to keep those two on the Black Ops team and not tell the world they're part of the Ultimates. Now, when it comes to Nick, he tells us this meeting is not done just yet because he has a dark secret to share about the Earth. You see, when it comes to the Ultimates, they may believe that the Earth is only home to the human race. But you have Nick say no. There's also 11 different alien races on Earth. And one of them is the Chitauri. And they have been trying to take over the Earth ever since the 1700s because they had the ability to shapeshift, and they have been using that ability as a way to work themselves into different governments around the world. They want to get rid of the human race and take over the Earth. And matter of fact, they almost achieved that goal back in the 1940s. World War II. They were working alongside with Hitler and the Nazis, but they were stopped by Steve Rogers, Captain America. Now, when it comes to Nick, he tells us that once the war had ended, the world believed that they were gone because no one could find any of them anymore, just dead bodies across the world. Until 2 years ago, where they kept finding more and more of them popping up left and right across the world. But when it came to that office building, every single person in that building that Black Widow and Hawkeye had killed were all Chitauri. And here's the thing. They were trying to plan another attack on America to take over America, but in different kinds of ways. And so when it comes to Nick, he says, listen, the Ultimate's main goal right now is to find their leader, but to also kill off the last few members of the Chitauri to save the Earth. But then you have Nick wonder again, hey, wait a second, where is Steve Rogers at? And somebody calls him up. But someone calls up Nick to tell Nick, hey, we found Steve. Steve is currently in Chicago. Now, Nick is wondering, why in the world is Steve in Chicago? And this person tells Nick, oh, well, Steve Rogers told us that you gave him a new assignment to overlook Hank Pym's arrest. And so he is currently in Chicago with a team who is about to go in and arrest Hank Pym, who's also in Chicago. Now, once you have Nick sit there and kind of think things through, he realized what Steve is about to do. And he tells everyone, hey, we need to get to Chicago right now because Captain America is about to beat down on Hank Pym for what he did to the Wasp. And so as we dive into the 9th issue of Ultimates, we pick up with Steve Rogers confronting Hank Pym. Now, let me just say this. You have Steve Rogers just getting straight to it like, hey, I want to talk to you outside right now. Leave the bar so we can talk. But my idea of talking is really more me kicking your butt because how dare you put your hands on your wife. Now, when it comes to Hank Pym, at first, he is trying his best to make different kinds of excuses to kind of say why he hit Janet, how it's okay for what he had done. But for Steve, no, he wants to beat down on Hank Pym. Matter of fact, he wants a challenge, and he tells Hank, go ahead and change. Turn to Giant Man. I want to give you a fair fight. Let's see if you are able to take me down. And you didn't have Hank turn into Giant Man. And you have the two characters fight. But it's really more of Steve being able to take down Giant Man no matter what. Now, after doing that, it's kind of funny because after you have Steve being able to take down Giant Man, you have a bunch of soldiers arrive saying, hey, Nick said you have to step down, like you were not allowed to beat down on Hank. But it's kind of like, y'all too late. Hank has got his butt whooped, literally got his butt whooped by Steve Rogers. Now, I kind of want to talk about Betty Ross for a brief moment to kind of show you guys why I do not like her character at all in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Not until she becomes She-Hulk, and even then it's still somewhat annoying. But when it comes to Betty Ross, back in Volume 1, we saw that she was always talking down to Bruce Banner. And the reason why, because after Bruce had turned into the Hulk the first time back in Ultimate Marvel Team Up number 2, it caused a lot of problems for her and Bruce's relationship. And it led to her leaving him behind. Now, as we know, when it came to the last volume, Bruce took the serum to kind of show the world that the world needed the Ultimates. But there was another reason why. Because of Betty. Once Bruce heard that Betty was going out on dates with other men, it literally caused him to take the serum to hopefully show it could possibly work, but to also get her back. And so when it comes to Betty, she's kind of like, I like the idea that Bruce went to extreme limits to hopefully get me back. And so now she's falling back in love with Bruce all over again. Honestly, crazy as hell. But then we have to go check in on Steve Rogers. And this is going to be an awkward moment for the character because he's going out of his way to check in on the Wasp to see how her recovery is going. Except when he walks into her room, she expressed that she is very angry in the idea that he has stepped into her and Hank's business because she believes that nobody else has the right to be part of her and her husband's business. Yes, she did get abused by him, but it's no one else's business at all. But she also believes that it is Steve trying to make a move on her, trying to get with her. Now, you could say that he was trying to do that, but at the same time, it's Steve saying, I'm trying to look out for you because you were being abused by Hank Pym. Either way, she no longer wants to be on the Ultimates, but she also no longer wants to talk to Steve Rogers at all. And she was one of the first few people who tried to become his friend back in Volume 1. But Steve Rogers has no choice but to go ahead and move on with his day. And the reason why, because we see Nick Fury, Black Widow, really most of the Ultimates about to go on their next mission. They're about to go after the Chitauri group to hopefully bring them down once and for all. But then we get a flashback. Now, this flashback does take place back in 1944, where we pick up with Steve Rogers being Captain America, but fighting against another character known as Kleiser, and they are currently fighting on top of a train. Now, when it comes to Kleiser, he is a Chitauri, and matter of fact, he is the leader of the group, but apparently he has been working alongside with Hitler and the Nazis to finish a nuclear device. Now, here's the thing. On that train is the last part needed to finish the nuclear device. And so when it comes to Steve Rogers, his main goal is to make sure they don't get that last part. Now for Kleiser, he believed that Steve Rogers was trying to hijack the train. But when it comes to Steve, he's all like, no, I'm not trying to hijack it. I'm just trying to blow it up to most definitely make sure you guys do not get this last part needed. And so you have Steve jump off the train and the train explodes. And we're left to believe that Kleiser had died alongside with the train. But then we pick up with Steve Rogers arriving at a meeting. Now, this meeting does take place days before the last mission that Steve was a part of when it came to World War II. The same mission we saw Steve going out of his way to stop the rocket that the Nazis were trying to use as a way to attack the United States. The same mission where it led to him falling to the bottom of the ocean and then being frozen in time. Now, when it comes to this meeting, it's really him just gathering all the different kinds of information we already know about, but he needs for that mission. But one piece of information is really important for us as the readers, because you have Steve ask the higher ups, hey, I heard that Kleiser is alive again, that he was seen around the world. And let's not forget, in the last section, we saw Kleiser get blown up alongside with the train, but apparently he didn't die. But unfortunately, the higher ups tell Steve, we don't have any hard evidence to prove that Kleiser is alive. We do feel like he is, and we do feel like he's still trying to find different ways to help out the Nazis. But now we have to jump back over to the present day, where we pick up with Steve Rogers and the Ultimates and also Nick on their way over to what they believe is the home base for the Chitauri. Now you have Steve express the idea that he's very worried about not being able to go back home again, because the last time it was a big mission, he fell to the bottom of the ocean and he froze in time until the Ultimates found him. He's very afraid of the idea of that happening once again. But you have Nick say, no, it's not going to happen. And the reason why, because one, they have the Ultimates working alongside with them, but also there is an entire army of SHIELD agents helping them out to make sure the mission goes well. But now we have to jump over to the Wasp. Now, here's the thing. The Wasp is in the hospital, but the hospital is actually part of the home base of the Ultimates. Now, when it comes to the Wasp, she was trying to call for the nurse to bring her a cup of water, but no nurse was actually answering her call. And so she decided to go out of her way to find some cup to get some water, except she didn't find some nurses, and she's now wondering why in the world they did not hear her call. Why were they not trying to help her? Now, you do have the nurses say, hey, sorry, we're busy, but you need to rest. So let us walk you back to your bed. But unfortunately, these nurses are not really nurses. They're actually Chitaris who had used their ability to shapeshift to disguise themselves as nurses, and they are trying to clear house of the home base of the Ultimates. And right now, the Wasp is their next target. Now, she was able to realize that this is some kind of ambush or some kind of trap. Either way, she realized she has to escape and get the word out to Nick Fury and the rest of the Ultimates that the home base has been taken over by the Chitauri. And this is where things get crazy, y'all, because now we pick up with the Ultimates and Nick Fury arriving to the island they believe to be the home base for the Chitauri, except when they do arrive, Thor got there hours ago, and he says, listen, I walked around the place to check it out, and I realized something. No one has been here for weeks. This place has been completely abandoned for most likely a month or two. Now for Nick, he cannot believe that. And the reason why, because he got his intel from the psychic division. And usually they're not wrong. But you have Iron Man confirm what Thor is saying, like, hey, this place does seem abandoned. Now, while you have the Ultimates talking, you have the Wasp back at the home base of the Ultimates trying to call out to them saying, hey, you guys are walking into a trap. They're right now trying to take over the entire home base. Now, here's the thing, because out of nowhere, somebody begins to talk to the Wasp. And we come to find out from the guy who was talking to the Wasp through the loudspeaker that apparently the psychic division of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been taken over by the Chitauri. They used their ability to shapeshift as a way to work themselves into the S.H.I.E.L.D. organization. And for a while, they have been feeding Nick false information. And that is really huge because right now, the Ultimates and Nick are on an abandoned island, not knowing that it was actually a trap, because on that island there is a bomb powerful enough to wipe out the island completely, to wipe out every single member of the Ultimates or S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who is currently there at the moment, to give them a big victory over S.H.I.E.L.D. But you did come to find out the person who is talking to the Wasp is Kleiser. He never did die back in World War II, and he has been working from the shadows to work up to this moment right here, to get rid of S.H.I.E.L.D., but to then try to take over the world. And as soon as the Wasp realizes what Kleiser is talking about, and she tries to inform Nick, the bomb goes off. And we're left to believe that all the Ultimates who were there on the island, all those different S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who were also on the island, have all been killed off. And so now we dive into the next chapter, where we pick up with Kleiser feeling very excited about the idea that he was able to win. He got rid of the Ultimates. He's about to capture the Wasp. All those different soldiers who were fighting alongside with the Ultimates were also wiped out. But at the same time, he wants to make sure that he did actually win. And so he does tell everyone working under him, hey, I want you to get all the different kinds of confirmation that you are able to get to confirm that the Ultimates have been wiped out, that the soldiers have been wiped out, that Nick Fury has been wiped out. Now, when it comes to Kleiser, he does give us a tad bit more information about the Chitauri by saying, hey, listen, Nick Fury was wrong about us. Like, yes, our main goal is to take over the Earth, but we are not trying to wipe out the human race. Instead, we want you guys to fall in line. Their main goal is to take away the free will of the human race. Let me explain why. You see, when it comes to the Chitauri, they go around the universe conquering different planets. But they don't kill off the races those belong to those planets. Instead, they just take away those people's free will to make them fall in line with their ideals. And so when it comes to the Chitauri, their main goal is to make sure the human race falls in line. They have been doing this for years on years across the universe. Now, yes, they have made a lot of enemies, but they are a huge empire that rules a huge chunk of the universe. And their main goal is to add the Earth to their empire. But then you have Kleiser mention one more very important piece of information, the idea of how the Chitauri conquers the different planets across the universe. You see, usually they work behind the scenes. They love the idea of pulling off secret invasions, but that is a huge problem here. And let me explain why. Because right after he tells the Wasp that, you then have all these different spaceships arrive on Earth across the entire planet. This is the rest of the Chitauri that Kleiser was talking about. But now they are announcing their presence to the entire world. And that ticks off Kleiser a lot because usually they don't work like that. And so he's wondering, hey guys, why are y'all here? But then you have a higher up tell Kleiser the reason why we are here, because while you've been on Earth, the rest of us have been losing the war against our enemies. We have lost planets across the universe that we used to rule over, and now we are trying to escape into another dimension. And so they came here to tell Kleiser, we have no choice but to go ahead and retreat, which means we have to go ahead and blow up this planet to make sure our enemies cannot follow us into our new home. And so in 45 minutes, we are going to use a bomb to blow up the Earth. But before the Chitauri is able to pull that off, you didn't have someone contact Kleiser to say, hey, listen, we are picking up something and we have no idea what in the world it could possibly be. And then out of nowhere, the Ultimates arrive. Every single member of the Ultimates, plus some of the soldiers who were near the Ultimates, were saved by Thor, and then they were teleported back over to the main base of the Ultimates. And so now you have the Ultimates getting ready to go to war against Kleiser and also the Chitauri race, who is trying to blow up the Earth. And Steve Rogers is very down with the idea of trying to stop Kleiser once again. And this leads into the rematch between Captain America and also Kleiser. Now, while you have Steve fighting against Kleiser, you have Iron Man and Thor going out of their way to attack all the different spaceships that had arrived on Earth. And you have the rest of the Ultimates just fighting against the rest of the alien invasion. But now I want to kind of focus on Steve Rogers, because this is his moment. It's him showing the world that, one, he is a great leader, but he's trying to make sure that this time Kleiser cannot come back down the road to cause more problems for the people of Earth. His main goal is to try to kill off Kleiser. Now, here's the thing. Kleiser is still a great opponent for Steve Rogers. They are able to go toe-to-toe for a few pages. When it comes to Steve Rogers, though, he always has backup plans on backup plans to actually help him win certain situations, like this one. Now, before we are able to dive into his backup plan, we have to shift our focus over to Black Widow and the Wasp, who is trying to find a way to shut down the bomb that could possibly blow up the entire planet. Now, when it comes to our two heroes, they are going out of their way to grab different scientists who do belong to the Chitauri race. But the problem is, these scientists rather die than actually help out the human race. But on top of that, all the different instruction manuals is written in the language of the Chitauri. And so unfortunately, the two ladies are having a hard time understanding how to dismantle the bomb before it blows up. But now we begin to learn the next part to Steve Rogers' plan, and that would be the Incredible Hulk. Yes, you heard that right. You see, when it comes to Steve Rogers, he realized the Hulk can give the Ultimates an edge in winning this battle, especially with the idea that the Hulk will kill almost anyone who is standing in his way. And right now, there are a lot of Chitauri standing in his way. Now, when it comes to the Hulk, the only thing he wants is Betty Ross. And so when it comes to Steve Rogers, he can use that as a way to control the Hulk. Now, when it comes to Bruce, he's having a hard time turning into the Hulk at first. And the reason why, because all the drugs they have put inside his body. But they realize there is one other way to make sure he'll turn into the Hulk. And so you have the soldiers who are currently containing Bruce Banner and throw him right out of the helicopter to have him fall to his death, but hoping that he'll change into the Hulk before he hits the ground. Now, when it comes to Steve Rogers, this is hilarious. You have Steve Rogers tell the Hulk that Kleiser has been talking about doing some dirty things to Betty Ross. And when it comes to the Hulk, that is not okay at all. And so you have the Hulk go out of his way to beat down on Kleiser. Now, once you have the Hulk being able to kill off Kleiser, you then have Steve Rogers reappear one more time, telling the Hulk, hey, all those different aircrafts in the air, they had start calling you different names, some very horrible names. And you should go out of your way to teach them a lesson that you are the best thing on the earth. And you have the Hulk say, yeah, you're right. And the Hulk began to smash all the different aircrafts that belong to the Chitauri. Now, we got to shift our focus back over to that bomb that's about to go off. Because you have Black Widow and the Wasp going out of their way to call almost any scientist who could possibly shut down the bomb. The problem is, all those different scientists, they rather spend time with their family before trying to defuse a bomb. They believe that this could be the final moments for the Earth. But then you have the Black Widow remember, wait a second. When it comes to the Ultimates, there's one person on the team who's great with technology, and that would be Iron Man. Now, when it comes to Iron Man, at first, it seems like what he is going to do is just take the bomb and take it into space, sacrifice himself to save the entire world. Except you have Tony say, no, there is no way I am going to give up my life to save the entire world. I'm going to use Thor because Thor has the ability to teleport things almost anywhere else in the universe. Now, we have to remember, when it comes to the Ultimate Marvel Universe, you were left to believe that it was our world. The big question was, what would happen if heroes appeared in our world? That was the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And so when it comes to most of the people in this universe, they don't believe that Thor is actually a god. They believe that every single piece of his outfit is just some kind of gadget. And so when it comes to Black Widow, she's kind of like, wait a second. You believe that Thor is going to have the ability to teleport the bomb somewhere else in the universe? And for her, it's all like, no. Most likely, he is going to teleport the bomb into Canada or Mexico. But either way, the world is doomed. Now, you have Thor show her, no, I am the Thunder Guard. And he does teleport the bomb somewhere else, somewhere near Asgard. So once it does blow up, the Earth will no longer be affected. And with our heroes being able to give the Hulk a serum to turn him back into Bruce Banner and also take out the last few members of the Chitauri, the day is now officially saved. And so before we wrap up today's video, there are a couple things I do want to talk about. So first, I want to talk about the idea that you now have the Ultimates being celebrated across the entire world, because thanks to the Ultimates, the world did not blow up. But now, the second thing I do want to focus on is the Wasp. Because here's the thing, when it comes to the Wasp, she's at a salon, but she gets a phone call from Hank Pym. Is Hank Pym and her officially breaking up with one another? She is officially done with Hank Pym and his abusive ways. But we kind of find out later on that night, she is beginning to get with Steve Rogers. Those two characters are now becoming a couple. And that really wraps up Ultimates Volume 2. And so now we can begin our coverage over Ultimates 2 Volume 1. Which for me personally, I love Ultimates 2 out of the trilogy of the Ultimates, because Ultimates 2 was one heck of a storyline. But this is where Okay, so getting back into the Ultimates, we now pick up with Ultimates 2 Volume 1. Now, let me explain about Ultimates 2 real quick, because when it comes to Ultimates 2, it really was used as a way to show that the Ultimates are going to go in a different direction. Because in the original Ultimate series, the main purpose of the Ultimates was supposed to be used as a superhero team to protect the country, to go after super villains. But the Ultimates were never supposed to be used to go attack other countries who could be enemies against America, who could be trying to attack America down the road. Because here's the thing, other countries don't have superhero teams. And so if you are talking about the idea of America sending in their own team to go attack other countries, it wouldn't be fair at all. It would make America look like some big bullies. But you had S.H.I.E.L.D., the American government, and also the Ultimates promise that they wouldn't do that at all. That they're only going to be used as a way to protect the country and chase after super villains. But that whole idea gets thrown out the window once we pick up with Steve Rogers in the opening pages of Ultimates 2 number 1, where you have Steve Rogers flying into hostile territory to save 9 hostages who are being held against their will. Now the thing is, these 9 hostages are being held in Iraq. Around this time in Marvel Comics and also the real world, Iraq was enemies with America. And so just like that, we're now seeing America sending in their superhero team to go in to handle different kinds of situations. America is now looking like the big bully to other countries. Now, it's just Steve Rogers. It's not the complete Ultimates team, but the point is, this is just a start. What happens once you have the Ultimates begin to send almost everybody into other countries to handle different kinds of situations? And really, that topic gets brought up very quickly, because when it comes to Larry King, in the last Ultimate series, he had interviewed Tony Stark about the idea of the Ultimates, because the people of America were really upset when they found out that $25 billion was used on the Ultimates program. Now, once the Ultimates had saved the world, the people of America had begun to love the superhero team. But now you have the people once again questioning the idea of the Ultimates, with them now going into other countries to attack other countries possibly. Now yes, it was Steve Rogers just going into Iraq to save some hostages, but again, that is just a start. What could possibly happen down the road? And it's Tony Stark trying his best to calm down the flames. Now we do jump over to Steve Rogers, and when it comes to Steve Rogers, we get reminded that he is currently dating the Wasp. You see, back in Ultimates Volume 1, the Wasp was brutally beaten by Hank Pym, and so by Volume 2 of Ultimates 1, she left him and got with Steve Rogers. Now here's the thing, Steve Rogers is very upset about the idea that there are different reporters constantly talking bad about the Ultimates, especially the Wasp, because the world knows that she is married to Hank Pym. But it looks really bad that every other day she's walking out to the apartment of Steve Rogers. Now when it comes to Janet, she tells Steve, hey, we're famous. Like, we have to get used to that. It's not always going to be great positive news about us. When it comes to the new world, they're trying their best to find anything that could possibly hurt us, like me dating you. And honestly, she's right, because that kind of talk right there is going to be really important by the end of this chapter. Now, when it comes to Hank Pym, the world knows that Hank Pym had beaten the Wasp. And so because of that, you have Betty Ross, the PR person for the Ultimates, tell Nick Fury that it's probably best to remove Giant Man from the Ultimates, because that really hurts the image of the entire team. And so for a long time, you had Hank Pym working on different projects that could possibly allow him to get back on the team. And he has been working on those projects with Bruce Banner. Now remember, Bruce Banner is locked up at the moment because back in Ultimates Volume 1, the dude killed hundreds of people in Manhattan as a way to help out the Ultimates. And I'll explain more of that here in a moment. But you have the two characters working on different kinds of things to possibly help Hank Pym get back onto the Ultimates, a new identity. And this leads into the idea of Ant-Man, because back in Volume 1 and Volume 2, Hank Pym was just Giant Man. That was it. But now we are going to move forward to the next step, Ant-Man. Now, something I do want to talk about is the Ultimate Marvel Universe, like how it was created. Because when it came to Brian Michael Bendis and also Mark Millar, they asked the fans one big question. They said, hey, imagine our world. Now, imagine the idea of heroes appearing in our world. What would that world look like? And so when it came to the Ultimate Marvel Universe, they were trying to answer that question with these different books. And so when it came to characters like Thor, most of the people in the Ultimate Marvel Universe believed that Thor was just some crazy person who believed that he was the god of thunder. But for everyone else, it's not possible for him to be the god of thunder. And when it came to his powers, it was just all tech-based. But also, it was well known in the world that Thor was actually a mental patient, a psych patient. And so to a lot of people, they look at Thor as someone who's just mentally ill. But he truly believes that he is the god of thunder. And really, this next section really shows the possibility that Thor could be mentally ill, because you have Thor going to a nearby diner to talk to Volstagg, who's from Asgard. Now, when it comes to Volstagg, he tells Thor, hey, I got a message for you from your father Odin. He's very worried for you and your new allies because your brother Loki had escaped again, and you know he has the ability to play with reality. Now, when it comes to Thor, he's not worried at all because he truly believes that he should be able to take down Loki. But then out of nowhere, you have a waiter walk up to ask Thor, hey, are you ready to order? Or in the possibility, are you waiting for a friend to show up? And Thor says, a friend to show up? What do you mean? My friend is right here in front of me. But you have the waiter say, dude, there's nobody there. And Thor looks over and realizes that he was just talking to, well, himself. And so now the question is Thor actually mentally ill, or is Loki on Earth right now playing with reality? Now we get into one of the big moments of Ultimates 2. In the first chapter, does a great job of pulling in the fans wanting more, because right off the bat, we pick up with Steve Rogers and the Wasp hanging out with Gale and Bucky. Now, while on this double date, out of nowhere, you have a bunch of reporters walk up to Steve Rogers and to begin questioning him about the Hulk. Now, let's not forget, back in Ultimates Volume 1, Bruce Banner took a new version of the Hulk serum to show the world that we need the Ultimates as a way to protect the world. Now, when it came to the people of America, they had no idea that Bruce Banner was the Hulk. You had S.H.I.E.L.D. and Betty Ross being able to keep that hush-hush, but to also make the Ultimates look very good. But they knew if the world find out that Bruce Banner was the Hulk, who used to work for S.H.I.E.L.D., and the only reason why he turned into the Hulk as a way to show the world we need the Ultimates as some kind of scheme done by the American government, you're gonna have the people begin to turn their backs on the Ultimates. Well, we kind of find out somebody had leaked that information to all the different news stations around the world, or America, and now everyone knows that Bruce Banner was the Hulk. But now we have to shift our focus over to Iron Man, who's right now helping out a new division given to us in this volume of the Ultimates, where we kind of find out that in Europe there was another super soldier program to hopefully enhance different soldiers to fight alongside their army. And we're introduced to Captain Britain, Captain France, and also Captain Spain. There's going to be a few more characters popping up from that division down the road in later chapters, but you have Iron Man going out of his way to use his new Iron Man suit to help them out to get a submarine out from the bottom of the ocean. Now, while doing that, Black Widow is in the main control room listening in on this mission, and we get confirmation that Black Widow and Iron Man are now dating one another. But here's the thing. When it comes to Black Widow, while waiting for Iron Man to return, well, she gets a call from Nick Fury, and he's calling for an emergency meeting. Now we get into the awkward parts of Ultimates 2, and that will be Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. Now, I did not mention this in Volume 1 nor 2 of Ultimates 1, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it now because it is going to be very important for Ultimates 3, unfortunately. When it comes to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, they are an incest couple. Yes, you heard that right. Brother and sisters who are in love with one another. But either way, you have those two characters also getting a call from Nick Fury about this very important meeting. Now, when it comes to this important meeting, it's really more of Nick Fury telling us that right now, heads are about to roll because the president is also ticked off because he had no idea that Bruce Banner was the Hulk. But on top of that, now the people of America, they're also upset because they were lied to. They believed the Hulk was just some random guy who popped up one day and you had the Ultimate step in to take him down and the day was saved. They were loved. But now they know that the Hulk was Bruce Banner, who worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., who took a super soldier serum to turn himself into the Hulk. And that whole project is being done by S.H.I.E.L.D., who's also running the Ultimates program. And so right now it looks really bad on the team. And you have the people of America say, Bruce Banner must die. He killed off 800 people in Manhattan. Put him on trial, and yes, he will lose, and yes, it'll be a death sentence, but that is what the people of America wants. Now, here's a big question though. Who told all those different news channels about Bruce Banner being the Hulk? And everyone says it has to be Thor, because Thor is one, not there at the moment, but two, let's not forget, back in Volume 1 of Ultimates, Thor did not want to join the team at all because he was afraid in the idea that Nick Fury could use the Ultimates to attack other countries around the world. And so the Nick and the S.H.I.E.L.D. and the rest of the team, Thor was always trying to ruin the Ultimates program. It has to be him who told the world that Bruce Banner was the Hulk. Now, you do have Steve go out of his way to go confront Thor. Now, we can't forget that when it comes to Thor, everyone believes that he's mentally ill, that he's not the god of thunder. And so when it comes to Steve, he's all like, hey, Thor, I know it was you who told the world that Bruce Banner was the Hulk. But you have Thor say, nah, man, it wasn't me. Like, yes, I hate the idea of what the Ultimates are becoming, the idea of going across the world to attack other countries, but it wasn't me who told the world that Bruce was the Hulk, but I do know who did tell the entire world. And you have Steve say, fine, then go ahead and tell me. And Thor says, hey, it was Loki. And you have Steve say, you know what? I'm done. Because I don't believe that you are the God of Thunder. And so because of that, I can definitely not believe in the idea that your brother Loki is out there right now trying to ruin us. And so you have Steve walk away. But for Thor, it's kind of like, but you believe in your God when you go to church on Sunday, but you can't believe that I'm a God and I have an evil brother who's out there trying to ruin us. But now it's time for us to check in with Bruce to see how Bruce is doing when it comes to handling all this mess that's out there in the open. And we see that he's currently in a therapy session with Charles Xavier. Now, when it comes to Charles, he is concerned in the idea of how Bruce is feeling. But Bruce tells Charles, I knew that this was coming one day. I knew that sooner or later I was going to die. I knew there was no way out of this. And so even though the world now knows that I am a killer, I'm okay dying for my sins, for my mistakes. And when it comes to Charles, he realized that, yeah, that is how Bruce feels. This is not Bruce trying to lie to Charles. It's Bruce telling the actual truth. And so you have Charles leave to go inform Nick how Bruce is doing. Now, right after Charles leaves, you then have Hank Pym stop by. Now, when it comes to Hank Pym, this is Hank telling Bruce, hey, listen, one, your trial is going to be televised across the world in many different countries. But on top of that, it's going to be in 95 different languages because a lot of people want to see you pay for your crimes. But then you have Hank say, oh, by the way, I'm leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, Bruce can't believe what he just heard. But it's Hank saying, well, listen, I tried to rejoin the Ultimates, but I can't because my past, because I hit my wife. They want a core of people where people, the public, can actually love. But on top of that, I gave my best project over to Nick Fury, which was the Giant Man Serum. And so now I am going to be replaced completely. I will no longer be Giant Man. Now what's going to happen is going to have random S.H.I.E.L.D. agents become giant men. The Ultimates are now being turned into a military team. They are going to be used to attack other countries around the world. They are going to fight alongside with giant men to help win battles in other countries. And when it comes to Bruce, he can't believe what he is hearing. But while you have the two guys talking to one another, it's Nick Fury listening in. And Nick is kind of like, yeah, that's true. Now, he didn't tell Bruce nor Hank that, but it's him kind of showing us, the readers, like, yeah, he's right. I'm trying to turn the Ultimates into a military team. And so then we dive into the trial for Bruce Banner. Now, here's the thing about the trial. You do have Matt Murdock coming out of his way to defend Bruce Banner. But the problem is, this trial is pointless because no matter what Matt says, no matter what evidence he used to help out Bruce, you're gonna have the judge and also the jury agree that Bruce Banner must pay. He should be killed off for the crimes that he had committed. And so while you have everyone watching, it's like, this is pointless. Why are we doing this? Go ahead and skip to the point where you say that he is sentenced to death. But while you have everybody watching this trial, we then shift our focus over to Thor, who's doing an interview on live television the same time you have Bruce on trial. And so when it comes to Thor, in this interview, he says, it's very upsetting that my own team members believed that me, Thor, would be the one to tell the world that Bruce Banner was the Hulk. But at the same time, though, I feel like this is just smoke and mirrors as a way to distract us because something bigger is coming down the road by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ultimates. And once again, it's Thor talking about the idea of the Ultimates being used as a military force to go into other countries to handle different kinds of situations that could possibly affect America down the road. It's Thor feeding into what the people of America are believing once again. But now we jump back over to Bruce Banner. Now, here's the thing. You have Bruce Banner right now just waiting for the word to figure out if he is guilty or innocent, even though he already knows that he's going to be guilty. Now, he is confronted by Betty Ross, and I know I said multiple times in my last two videos, I don't like Betty Ross at all when it comes to her in the Ultimate Marvel universe, because she's really toxic. Let me explain. So when it came to Bruce Banner, the first time he turned into the Hulk by this point in the Ultimate Marvel universe was in Ultimate Marvel Team Up #2. Now after that, he was cured and he lost Betty Ross. She wanted nothing to do with him at all. She moved on with her life. Now, like I said earlier, when it came to Bruce taking a new version of the Hulk serum, the first reason was because he wanted to show the world we do need the Ultimates. But there was another reason why. That second reason was because he heard that Betty Ross was on a date and he was ticked off. And so when he took the serum and turned into the Hulk was going crazy to get Betty Ross back. Now, here's the thing, because after you had the Ultimates be able to take the Hulk down, Betty Ross expressed the idea that now she was back in love with Bruce Banner because he went so far to do some crazy things to get her back. It showed her that she wanted to be with him once again. And for me personally, that's just really toxic like no other. But now she feels guilty because now Bruce is going to die. And she realized that part of the reason why he turned to the Hulk is because of her. And so now she wants Bruce to say, hey, just please tell me you love me. When it comes to Bruce, he can't say that. He can't tell her that he loves her. And so she feels heartbroken. But right after that, you then have Nick Fury arrive. Now, when Nick arrives, it's Nick saying, hey man, listen, I got some news for you. The whole entire case got thrown out. You are a free man. You are good to go. Let's drink. And so you have Nick Fury give Bruce a drink, having him believe that he actually won, that he's actually innocent, until he realized the drink was drugged to knock him out, because now they are going to kill off the Hulk. Now, when it comes to the Ultimates, they realize that the only way to make sure that Bruce Banner actually dies is to throw a nuke at him. It has to be the only way to kill off the Hulk, to kill off Bruce Banner. Now, most of the Ultimates, they're very upset with the idea what they have to do here, but at the same time, they have no choice. He was found guilty for all the crimes that he had committed. He has to pay for his crimes. And so, right when the nuke drops, we see his eyes turn green. But now we jump over to Hank Pym. Now, when it comes to Hank Pym, remember, he told Bruce earlier that S.H.I.E.L.D. was trying to get rid of him completely. And it seems by this point, he's out now. And so you have Hank going back to his apartment where he has a couple missed calls, one for a new apartment, but the other one is a guy from his old department demanding that Hank Pym sends back over the Ultron plans. And you have Hank say, no, there's no way I am going to give them my designs for my Ultron program. But then he gets another call. And when he answers it, it's Bruce, or somebody, it's Bruce obviously, it's Bruce saying, hey Hank, thank you for what you done for me. And it seems like Bruce was able to escape because he turned to the Hulk right when the nuke hit. And so Bruce is out there in the world just hiding. And the question is right now, where? Now, Bruce Banner is gone, yes, but here's the problem. You see, now you have the people of America once again questioning the whole idea of the Ultimates. Because if the Ultimates had lied about Bruce Banner, then what else are they lying about? Are they actually lying about the idea of the Ultimates being used as a military force? You can tell the public, no, we are not going to do that. But in reality, that could be a lie. And then you could use them as a military force. The people of America wants answers. And so now you have different members of the Ultimates going out of their way to do different interviews to kind of say, no, we're just here to help protect the country. That's it. Yes, we can handle small problems. We can also handle big problems, but we are not going to be used as a military force yet. Now, we have to jump over to Black Widow and Iron Man, where we see that Iron Man has gone out of his way to create Black Widow her own iron suit, but also he does ask for her hand in marriage. And she says yes. So now Black Widow and Iron Man are engaged. And this is great. But here's the thing. That iron suit that Iron Man gave to Black Widow is going to be very important in later videos. But now we have to jump over to Italy, where we actually pick up with a protest happening in Rome. Now, this protest is all about the idea that you have different countries in Europe coming together to build their own super soldiers, just like America is doing currently. Now, we already saw Captain Britain, Captain France, Captain Spain, but there are others out there who are part of this whole Euro super soldier program. And the people of Italy do not like the idea that their money is being used for those reasons. Now, when it comes to the protest, it's supposed to be a peaceful one, except you now have the protesters being attacked by the police. Now, Thor steps in because Thor agrees that right now the protesters are protesting the right thing. Why in the world do different countries need super soldiers for? Why are you guys always trying to go to war with one another? And so for Thor, he goes out of his way to attack the police officers to protect the protesters. But now we jump over to the Dome. Now, the Dome is the home base for the European Defensive Initiative team. This is the team that was able to create their own captain. Captain Britain, Captain France, Captain Spain, and the list goes on. Now, the reason why we are going to jump over to the Dome is because you have the Ultimates also arriving at the base as well, because this is going to be a team up. The Ultimates and the European Defensive Initiative team, they're going after Thor for what he did. To these two teams, he is completely in the wrong. But at the same time, we begin to learn the supposed origin for Thor by one character, and his name is Gunnar Goldman. Now, when it comes to Gunnar, he tells us two things. One, he's part of the Norwegian team for the European Defensive Initiative, but also he is the brother of Thor. Now, when it comes to Gunnar, he says, listen, when it comes to us Norwegians, we were trying to create our own super soldiers, but unfortunately, we could not accomplish that goal. And so we went into a different direction. That direction was technology. Give someone some advanced technology that would make them a super soldier. Hence the idea of Thor. Because like I said earlier, most of the heroes on the Ultimates did not believe that Thor was a god. They believed that Thor had some advanced technology. And so when it comes to Gunnar, he confirms that by saying, hey, listen, I created everything that Thor is currently using, because originally I was supposed to give that tech to somebody else, but my brother stole that tech. Now, here's the thing about Thor, because now you have Gunnar saying Thor is mentally ill. He does have something wrong with him. And so I believe because of his illness, it led him to believe that he was the god of thunder. Made him believe that I am Loki, but also made him believe that my tech was his actual armor suit that made him the God of Thunder. But either way, it's Nick saying we need the Ultimates and also the EDI to go after Thor to bring him in. Now, you do have the Ultimates and the EDI be able to find Thor very easily, except once they do find Thor, it's now him trying to prove that he is actually innocent. He's all like, hey guys, listen, y'all believe which I want to believe, but I want to tell you guys that you are being tricked by my brother Loki. Matter of fact, the guy at the compound, his name is not Gunnar. His name is Loki. He's playing mind games with y'all. But the problem is the Ultimates in the EDI, they truly believe that Thor is mentally ill. And so you have Steve Rogers tell Thor, nah man, there's no way out of this at all. We all believe that you need some help and we are here to help you. So go ahead and step down before things get very ugly. Now, when it comes to the final chapter for today's video, we really see Thor going up against the Ultimates. Now, for me personally, this is one heck of a battle, but it also shows that Thor is not playing around here. He's trying to prove that he is innocent. He's trying to prove that the Ultimates are being controlled by Loki in some kind of way. Now you have Thor say, listen, this is what Nick Fury wants as well. He wants to get rid of me because I was the only person who saw the real purpose to Nick's idea when it came to the Ultimates. Once I'm gone, he is going to send you guys over to other countries to attack those countries for standing in his way. But for the Ultimates, they are continuing to ignore Thor. Now, when it comes to Thor, you have the EDI say, if you get rid of his belt, he'll be powerless. He will no longer be the most powerful character on the earth. He should be easy to take down. But that's the problem though. They're having a hard time getting to the belt. And so every single time you have one of the Ultimates get close enough, he sends them flying back the other direction. Now, it all comes down to Quicksilver though, because let's not forget, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch are part of the Ultimates, even though they haven't done anything at all in 3 volumes. But this is a big moment for Quicksilver, because while the rest of the Ultimates in the EDI are getting their butt whooped, you didn't have the Scarlet Witch go over to her brother and say, hey, you have to try one more time. You have to get rid of Thor. Get rid of that belt. All because he hit me. And like I said earlier, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, well, they are they're a couple. Yeah, that's weird. But either way, because his sister was hit, he gets so angry, he runs full speed and being able to grab the belt, take it away from Thor. And just like that, Thor is no longer powered anymore. He is powerless. And now they can take him in. After you have Thor get locked up by the Ultimates, he's then confronted by Gunnar. But this is the moment where we get confirmation that Gunnar is Loki. Now, when it comes to Loki, he tells Thor, hey, listen, man, it was me who turned the Ultimates against you because, you know, we play this game over and over and over again. And every single time you do find a way to stop me, but I really want to see how you're going to stop me this time. Now, when it comes to Loki, he tells Thor, oh, by the way, when it comes to the Hulk, I didn't tell the world that Bruce Banner was the Hulk. Matter of fact, it was somebody else. Really, let me bring you in on a secret. Somebody on your team, the Ultimates, is actually a traitor. And then you have Loki walk away. Now, here's the thing. Loki was able to use his abilities to hide from the cameras. And so again, it does look like that Thor is just talking to himself. But in reality, he was talking to Loki. But now we have to shift our focus over to Nick Fury. And you have Nick Fury meeting up with the Ultimates, some members of the Ultimates. Now, like I have been saying in this entire video, you had the public wondering, would the Ultimates begin to be used as a military force? But you had the Ultimates tell everyone, no, We are a superhero team only to be used to handle small problems in our country, to go after super villains. But you have Nick tell the Ultimates, hey, we got trouble in the Middle East. And so that means the Ultimates are now about to be used as a military force. But with that being said, this is where we are going to end today. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Ultimates, we do pick back up once again with Ultimates 2. Now, like I said in our last video, when it comes to the Ultimates 2 series, the main purpose of this series was to show that Nick Fury has been lying the entire time. You see, back in Ultimates 1, he kept telling everybody in the world that he was not going to use the Ultimates as a military force. Instead, his main goal was to use the Ultimates to protect America, but to also go after super villains, which again ties into protecting America. They were not going to be used as a military force against other countries at all. But when it comes to Ultimates 2 Volume 1, we had gotten a lot of different examples of him just flat out lying, because he did use the Ultimates in different kinds of situations around the world. And it's kind of showing the Ultimates now being used as a military force. And really, at the tail end of our last video, we saw him talk to a few members of the Ultimates, and they were about to go on another mission somewhere else in the world, once again showing they're being used as a military force. But when it comes to Nick Fury, he kind of realized that just having one team of Ultimates is not good enough. He needs multiple teams of Ultimates. And really, it was hinted back in our last video, because remember, when it came to Hank Pym, he was fired by S.H.I.E.L.D. because he gave Nick the one thing Nick wanted from Hank, which was the Giant Man Serum. And so now Nick is able to take that serum and give it to other people. And that starts a new project known as Goliath, where you're going to have giant men being able to be used against other countries around the world. But Nick is not going to stop there, because now we pick up in today's storyline where we see the Ultimates trying their best to handle a hostage situation on a plane. Now, once you have the Ultimates being able to take out the bad guys and then throw them off the plane, you have the guys be saved by three men who are wearing older versions of Iron Man suits, and they are called the Rocket Men. And so that shows that even Tony Stark has now begun the process of actually helping Nick kick off different kinds of projects that could possibly build other teams of Ultimates who could also be military teams to use against other countries around the world. And really, when it comes to Nick, he does not stop there at all, because as we dive into the next page, we see the other projects that Nick is currently working on. So for example, there is a project called the 4 Seasons, where you have 4 different characters who are going to wear suits that will give them abilities to use out in the field against other countries who are trying to attack America. But we also kind of find out there is someone else known as Lieberman who's going through the Super Soldier program. They're trying to create another Captain America, because this guy was able to actually take the serum, and he has shown that he's almost on level with Steve Rogers. And this is great, because if they are able to get him going, then the possibility of others are just down the road. Now, when it comes to Nick Fury, he knows there are going to be other countries out there in the world who are going to begin the process of trying to defend themselves against the Ultimates. Because if the Ultimates are going to be used as a military force, they're going to need some protection. And matter of fact, when it comes to Nick, he is confronted by Victor. Now, when it comes to Victor, he is the general from Russia, and he does express the idea that there are other countries who are very upset about the whole Ultimates program. Now, at first, those countries were okay with the first Ultimates team because it seemed to them that team was put together because of 9/11. But now when it comes to Nick, he's now building more Ultimates just for the heck of it. And when it comes to Victor, that is not okay at all. And so you also have Victor say, you are breaking some rules when it comes to the United Nations, because apparently all countries had agreed to stop working on superhuman programs. But here's SHIELD right now, just going out of their way to create these different kind of super beings. Now, we do pick up with a guy known as Mr. Nix. Now, when it comes to Nix, apparently he's the best assassin in the entire world. But by this point, he had retired. But apparently somebody is trying to hire him and bring him out of retirement to go after Nick Fury. And this shows the fear of the idea that there are people worried that you're going to have all of these different countries begin the process of trying to build superhuman beings to use against each other. Is going to lead into possibly another war. And so when it comes to Nix, he's being hired to kill off Nick Fury. Now, we also get reminded that when it comes to the Ultimates, in the last video we did, they had to kill off Bruce Banner, because when it came to Bruce, he had killed off 800 people when he turned the Hulk back in Ultimates 1. And so he was put on trial, he was found guilty, and was given a death sentence. Now, when it came to the Ultimates, they had dropped a nuke on him, believing it would have killed him off. Well, now Nick gets word that apparently the Hulk is not dead, because you have different members of reserves out there across the world trying to handle different kinds of situations. And one of them responded to the idea of some kind of big beast just walking around. And that big beast was the Hulk. And so now Nick knows the Hulk has survived, and this could be a possible problem down the road. Now, when it comes to the Ultimates being out there, you're now having other people in the world who are very inspired to become heroes as well. But here's the problem. The Ultimates are well-trained heroes. These new people who are popping up, they're not trained at all, and most likely they could die down the road if they try to handle some big time situation. So for example, we now have the Defenders. Now, when it comes to this group, none of them have any abilities at all that could possibly help them out in the field, but they do claim to be well-trained fighters, and they want to be vigilantes. They want to go out of their way to protect the innocent people. But the problem is, again, they're not well-trained heroes. They have no abilities at all. And most likely, this team is going to get themselves killed, or possibly somebody else. And when it comes to Nick Fury, he is always trying to prove that the world needs the Ultimates. He's trying to justify his reasons of why the world needs them, because every single day a new threat pops up. But sooner or later, there are going to be multiple threats across the world. And unfortunately, the Ultimates cannot handle all those threats at once. And so that is why you need to have more and more members of the Ultimates. For example, there used to be a time and day where if you were hit with a nuclear wave, you were going to die from cancer. But now there's a possibility if you are hit with a nuclear wave, you could turn into a huge monster that is going on a rampage. And so when it comes to Nick, he's trying to prove this is just one reason why we need the Ultimates. Imagine a world where you have monsters popping up left and right across the world. Do you really think one team of Ultimates can handle all those different things at once? But now we have to jump back over to Mr. Nix. Now, when it comes to Nix, we see him meeting up with some guy who's handing him a very special kind of weapon. A weapon that was only in development by SHIELD. And SHIELD had only made 2 of these weapons so far. And so when it comes to Mr. Nix, this weapon can be used as a way to take out Nick Fury, and he does plan on using that weapon to take out Nick. Now I want to shift our focus back over to Lieberman, because remember, when it comes to Lieberman, he was supposed to be another Captain America. But when it comes to Nick, he's telling Lieberman, yes, you may become another Captain America, but in reality, you could become the main Captain America, because you have Nick saying here, we don't know how long we are going to have Steve around. Steve could possibly die in the next 5 years or possibly sooner. Or there is the idea that he may turn evil. And so we have to be ready for anything. And so Lieberman, I want to tell you that you are going to become the next Captain America, because this is the first guy in 50 years to be able to take the super soldier serum and now be on level with Steve Rogers. And so now we are talking about having 2 Captain Americas in the world. Now here's the thing about the reserves, because remember, most of the reserves are given different kinds of suits or technology to be able to use different kinds of abilities or weapons out in the field. The only ones who actually do have abilities are the Goliaths and also Lieberman. Now, when it comes to the giant men, they're being kept on base, but the others, they're allowed to leave the base and go out at night to have some fun. And so we do go the 4 seasons, the Rocket Men and also Lieberman. Now, while hanging out, they see a bunch of fire trucks heading over to a location where there is a huge fire. Now, when it comes to Lieberman, he wants to help out, but the rest of the team can't because the Rocket Men don't have their armor suits. When it comes to the 4 seasons, they don't have their power suits. And so Lieberman has to go on his own. But apparently something happened to him when he tried to help out the firefighters with that fire, because you have Nick get a call saying, hey man, you need to come back to base. And once you have Nick arrive at the base, we come to find out that Lieberman had died. Something with the super soldier serum shut down his entire body, his brain, his organs. He just died right then and there. He did not even make it inside the fire at all to start helping out the firefighters to save the innocent people. And so now you have Nick going back to the drawing board, now trying to find somebody else who could possibly be that second Captain America. But now we have to jump back over to Mr. Nix. Now, when it comes to Nix, he's about to take the shot to kill off Nick Fury to make the world a better place. But here's the thing, Nix gets a call from the lady who gave him the job, and she tells him, hey, listen, I know who hired you. The person that hired you was Nick Fury. And by the time Nix hears those words, Nick Fury has a gun pointing right at him and takes a shot, killing off Mr. Nix. And the reason why Nick had hired Nix is because Nick's saying there are going to be people out in the world who are going to try to kill me for many different reasons. And those kind of people like Mr. Nix, who are great assassins, I have to go ahead and go out of my way to take them out now so that they will not be a problem down the road for me. Now, the next chapter is really going to focus on Hank Pym, because by this point in the Ultimates 2 series, Hank Pym has lost his wife. He has lost his job at S.H.I.E.L.D. He was let go from the Ultimates. He had officially hit rock bottom in his standards. And so for Hank, he's kind of wondering, where can he go next? And so he joins the Defenders. Now, like I said earlier, when it comes to the Defenders, they are a group of nobodies. They have no abilities at all, and they're going around lying to the world that they have powers, or at least they have some kind of training in fighting, but they don't. And so for Hank, he's kind of wondering, what's the point on being this team right here, a team of nobodies? Now, this is also the moment where you have Hank Pym introduce the idea of Ant-Man being able to shrink down in size, the opposite of Giant Man. And he'll be the only person on the entire team who has powers, but he's trying his best to see how far this team can actually go. Now, even though Hank had joined the Defenders, he's still trying to rejoin S.H.I.E.L.D. at least. He knows that he can't join the Ultimates because, well, he's well known across the world as a wife beater, but he wants to at least rejoin S.H.I.E.L.D. by showing Nick different kinds of projects that he has been working on. So, for example, Ultron and also Vision. But when it comes to Nick, he does not want anything from Hank at all. He tells Hank, leave. Just leave the base completely. You're not getting your job back at all. You have been officially let go. Goodbye. Now, when it comes to Hank, on his way out, he runs into his ex-wife. And this really sucks. And the reason why? Because now she can see him at rock bottom. Now, he lies to her, but we know that he has hit rock bottom. Now, when it comes to Hank, while he is leaving, the Vision robot actually does flirt with Scarlet Witch, and that is going to be very important for Ultimates 3. Now we have to jump back over to the Defenders. Now, here's the thing, because these guys got a great idea. When I say a great idea, I really mean a dumb idea. You see, when it comes to the Defenders, they want the world to know about them. And so one of the members of the group says that his cousin got word that a bunch of guys are about to rob a nearby warehouse. If the team is able to stop them on camera and give that footage over to a news channel, then the world is going to know about them and begin to take them more seriously. Now, here's the problem, because like I said earlier, this team, they don't have any abilities at all except Hank Pym with the Ant-Man ability. And besides that, none of them have proper training when it comes to fighting. But now they are about to go out somewhere and try to stop some guys who may have weapons and possibly get killed or just seriously hurt. And honestly, that's what happens next, because when it comes to the Defenders, when they do try their best to stop the group of guys who are trying to rob that warehouse, well, those guys, one, have weapons, and two, they were able to easily overcome the Defenders. Now, you had Nighthawk going first, believing that he should be able to pull off a surprise attack, and the rest of the team should have moved in. But the problem is, Nighthawk failed when it came to the surprise attack. And then you had those guys beat down on Nighthawk to the point where he becomes seriously injured. And so then you have other members like Valkyrie try to run in to hopefully stop those guys. But again, she has no powers or fighting skills at all. So Hank Pym has no choice but to go ahead and become Giant Man once again to stop those guys. But then a picture was taken of him naked and put on the front page. But here's the problem, because now the world knows that one, Hank Pym has hit rock bottom, that he joined the Defenders, a loser group basically. And on top of that, now Nighthawk is in the hospital. And so for Hank, he's wondering how low can he truly go? Now, when it comes to Hank Pym, he does go home for the day. And once he's able to go home, he is confronted by somebody. Now, this somebody is actually the traitor to the Ultimates, the person that has been sharing all the different secrets about the Ultimates to the world. So Hank knows about the traitor, but apparently this traitor is now informing Hank about what the Ultimates have now become. They are now a military force because they had just attacked another country. They had just crippled another country, a third world country. And that is going to be huge. And you're going to see how in later chapters, in later videos. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Ultimates 2 series, we do pick up with Volume 2, the first 3 chapters of Volume 2, which really does show the downfall to America. Now, guys, remember, when it comes to Ultimates 2, it went into a completely different direction than Ultimates 1 did. You see, Ultimates 1 was really more of, let's put together a superhero team to protect America, to go after super villains. But now Ultimates 2 is going into a direction where it's more of, hey, let's use the Ultimates as a way to attack other countries. Turn our superhero team into a military force to use against countries who could become possible threats down the road against America. Now, let's not forget, after Nick Fury was able to put the Ultimates together and then get the backing of the American government, he did begin to go out of his way to create more members to have on the Ultimates. He wanted at least 5 different teams out there to be able to handle different kinds of situations around the world. And so, when it came to Nick, he began to launch different kinds of projects that would give him more members to the Ultimates. So for example, the Goliath program. When it came to Hank Pym, he was the first Giant Man. But after beating his wife, he was kicked off the Ultimates, fired from S.H.I.E.L.D., but they took his formula and gave it to other men who are now able to turn into giant men, or Goliaths. Same thing for Iron Man. Once you had Iron Man join the Ultimates, you then had Tony go out of his way to create other armor suits for other people to actually wear. And so it shows that Nick Fury had this plan in his head the entire time. He wanted an army of superpower beings to use against other countries around the world. And so, when it comes to Nick Fury in this storyline, we see him that 6 weeks ago, he sent the entire Ultimates program to attack a nuclear facility to make sure that they would not be able to use none of their nuclear missiles against America, but possibly other countries around the world. Now, some people in those countries were really upset about the idea that America had invaded their country for no actual good reason. Like, yes, they did have nuclear weapons, but did you know they were going to use those weapons against America? Or was this you just saying, hey, just in case, we are going to shut down your facility. Even though this is your country, we're coming here to shut you down. And some of those people could come back and try to attack S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ultimates down the road. Now, when it comes to Thor, we have to remember that he was locked up at the tail end of Ultimates 2 Volume 1, because in that volume, we had supposedly seen Thor attack a group of police officers who were trying to supposedly stop a protest from happening. But because he did attack those police officers, the Ultimates had no choice but to go ahead and lock him up. Now, something I do want you guys to remember, when it comes to the original Ultimate Marvel universe, it was created in a way where you had to think about our world, the real world, and what would happen if heroes had appeared in our world. And so for most of the people of Earth, they look at Thor as a mentally ill person because there's no way that he is the god of thunder. Now, what also really hurt him was that his brother appeared, Loki. Now, when it comes to Loki, we already know he is the god of mischief, but he played the Ultimates completely by saying that he was some scientist who was going out of his way to help his home country create their own super soldier by using technology. But Thor, being a mentally ill person, went out of his way to steal the tech and to become Thor. But when it comes to today's video, we see Thor talking to Iron Man. Now, Iron Man and Thor, they were close friends back in Ultimates 1, Volume 1, and Volume 2, and really the early parts of Volume 1 for Ultimates 2. But now they're no longer friends because now Thor had heard that the Ultimates are going out of their way to attack other countries around the world. Now, when it comes to Thor, he had high hopes for Tony because Tony was also somebody who said, I would not be part of a team that goes out of their way to attack other countries. But here he is now, going out of his way to attack other countries around the world. Now for Tony, they had a legit excuse to bring him on for that last mission because, again, it was a nuclear facility. But you have Thor saying, oh, that's all it took to get you on board. Well, here's a question for you right now. If they say China, Japan, or North Korea has some nuclear missiles, are you again going to attack that country as well? What if they say Australia had just built one nuclear missile? Are you going out of your way to attack them as well? And for Tony, he believes that Thor is just talking madness. Now, we have to pick up with the Wasp because remember, the Wasp is dating Steve Rogers by this point of the Ultimates. But when we pick up with her, we see her on a date or a lunch date with Hank Pym. Now remember, Hank Pym by this point is her ex-husband or soon to be ex-husband as they go through the divorce process. But the reason why she left him because he had beaten her so badly back in volume 1 of Ultimates 1, she almost died. She barely survived. But then she moved on and got with Steve. But now here she is, she's telling Hank that she wants to leave Steve for him. And here is the reason why. Steve is too 1940s. You see, he hates all the shows that she watched. He hates all the clothes that she wears. And a lot of times when they go out for different kind of events, they're hanging out with Bucky and Gale, two friends of Steve Rogers from the 1940s. And so for her, it's just too boring. She wants some excitement in her life. And she believes that Hank can give her that once again, possibly. But now we have to shift our focus over to the home of Hawkeye. Now, when it comes to Hawkeye, let's not forget, he has a family, a wife and a couple of kids. I want to say 3 kids actually. But when it comes to their home, they just were hosts for an Ultimates dinner. You had the Ultimates over, having dinner, having drinks, having a good time. But everybody left. Now, when it comes to his wife, the doorbell rings. And she believes it is the Scarlet Witch coming back for her purse. Except it's not the Scarlet Witch. It's a group of guys with guns who kills off Hawkeye's wife just like that. She's gone. And by the time he realized what happened to his wife, they barge into his house and they kill all of his kids. And they shoot him up, but to make sure that he survives so that they'll be able to take him as a hostage. But then, right before the ending of this first chapter, Hawkeye sees who is the traitor to the team. Now, when it comes to his reaction, we can tell it has to be somebody who's very close to him, somebody he trusted very well. And now that person had just killed off his entire family. And so we jump over to Steve Rogers. Now, when it comes to Steve Rogers, well, he goes out of his way to confront the Wasp, to tell the Wasp that he knows that she was with Hank Pym. Now, for Steve, he's wondering, why in the world are you trying to go back to your abuser? Somebody who actually beat you down, not once, but multiple times over the years that you have been with him. And now you have a guy who actually loves you, who actually protects you, who does not put his hands on you. Why are you going back to Hank? And you have the Wasp say, because you're boring. Like literally every day we are arguing over almost everything that I like. The shows I watch, the clothes I wear, the words I say. You hate almost everything about me because I'm not Gale. I'm not someone from your time, the 1940s, because you have not been able to adjust to current times, to current ways. And so you have Steve just leave. He jumps off the balcony to go somewhere else in the world to just get some fresh air, to get away from her. But this is the moment we can say that Steve and the Wasp are most likely officially over. But now we have to jump over to Nick Fury. Now, when it comes to Nick, he got word what happened to Hawkeye, and so he had headed straight over to the home of Hawkeye to hopefully find any kind of clues to figure out what exactly happened to him. Now, we do get confirmation that Hawkeye's family is officially dead. The entire family has been wiped out, minus Hawkeye. Now, when it comes to Nick, he tells us that he has cameras all over the place. And so he tells his team to go ahead and tap into those cameras to figure out who led a team of soldiers to attack the home of Hawkeye. Now, when it comes to Nick and all the different agents that are with him at the moment, they are very surprised to see who is in the camera taking out the family of Hawkeye. And so now we jump back over to Steve Rogers. Now, when it comes to Steve, you have Steve going over to the home of Bucky. Now remember, Bucky did not become the Winter Soldier in Ultimate Marvel. At the end of World War II, he just married Gail and they began a life with one another. They grew old with one another. And so Bucky is just an old man, but still a very close friend for Steve. And so this is Steve going to Bucky to have a shoulder to cry on, to have somebody to talk to. Because yes, even though Steve and the Wasp did not date that long, and so unfortunately they're going to break up, this is also a man who was thrown into a new world, and then as soon as he arrived in the new world, he was told to become Captain America again, to then lead a team of heroes against different kinds of threats. And so this man unfortunately did not have the chance to actually sit down to catch his breath. And the only thing he was so happy about is now being taken away from him. He already lost Gale to Bucky, and now he is losing the Wasp. But while you have the two guys talking to one another, they don't realize that Nick and S.H.I.E.L.D. are about to move in and go after Steve Rogers. Because when they looked at that camera footage, they saw Steve Rogers. And so they believe that Steve Rogers was the one who killed off Hawkeye's family. He's the one who has been leaking information to everybody across America. He is the one who is currently holding Hawkeye somewhere. And so you have Nick send in the reserves to attack Steve Rogers, to bring him down. Now, Steve has no idea what in the world is going on here. He's kind of like, hey, why are you attacking me? Why are you not talking to me? But this is Nick saying, no, there is no time to talk to you because I know what you did. Now, this is also Nick thinking that when it comes to Steve Rogers, that he was planted there in the waters where Iron Man found him as a way to begin the process to bring down S.H.I.E.L.D., to bring down the American government, that one of their enemies had planned this for a very long time. But again, Steve has no idea what he is talking about. But either way, this chapter ends with Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. and the reserves being able to take down Captain America. And the news spreads fast across all the different news channels across the world or across America. The idea that Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. had just taken down Steve Rogers, that most likely he is the traitor. And different members of the Ultimates cannot believe what they are hearing on the news. And so getting into the final chapter for today's video, we do pick up with Hawkeye now being tortured by some random guy who does a very good job in torturing people. Now, we kind of find out that it has been a couple of days since Hawkeye has been abducted, but we also kind of find out that ever since he was taken, they have been using Hawkeye as a way to gain intel on S.H.I.E.L.D., on different top secret things about S.H.I.E.L.D., how to most likely take S.H.I.E.L.D. down. But unfortunately, Hawkeye can't do anything at all. He's just stuck there and has to be tortured over and over again as they give him different chemicals that allows him to talk. But of course, when he does talk, he's just sharing secrets. But now we jump over to the home of Iron Man. Now remember, around this time in the Ultimate Marvel universe, Iron Man was engaged to Black Widow. And so you have Iron Man being that good fiance to see how Black Widow is doing, because her and Hawkeye, they were very close friends. They were partners for years in S.H.I.E.L.D. to only hear that, hey, listen, your partner has been kidnapped and his entire family has been killed off. And so she's going through it at the moment, but she tells Tony that she wants to cuddle. It's code word for get in bed and get her freak on. But now we get into the fall of America. Oh my gosh. This was literally the best part of Ultimates 2. Really, out of all three Ultimates, Ultimates 2 is the best one out of the trilogy. Now, when it comes to the fall of America, you have the Ultimates just meeting up, and you still have the Ultimates not believing in the idea that Steve Rogers would be the guy on a team of heroes as a traitor. They'll want to share all the secrets of S.H.I.E.L.D. to the American people. But while you have the Ultimates talking, that is when things pop off. All major cities are being attacked by an unknown force of metahumans. I'm talking about Chicago, New York, LA, Miami. If there's a major city in your state, it's getting attacked at the moment. And so right now you have the Ultimates wondering what in the world is going on. But then their base gets blown up. Now, luckily for the Ultimates, Quicksilver was able to get everyone out of there just in time. But now you have Quicksilver trying to use his abilities as a way to take down some of the enemies. But the problem is, there's too many of them. And while everything is popping off, Iron Man hears it and he wants to go help out the Ultimates. And that is when we come to find out that Black Widow is actually the traitor. It was not Captain America. It was Black Widow. And now Iron Man is being held hostage. Oh, by the way, Black Widow kills off Jarvis just like that. But now we have to shift our focus over to Loki. Now, when it comes to Loki, he's been around the entire time in the Ultimates 2 series. It's just that no one believed that Loki was actually real. Because again, they believed that Thor was just a mentally ill person who kept saying he's the god of thunder, that his evil brother is playing mind games. But right now, it shows that the god of mischief is up to something, and that something is to see America fall to its knees. Now, with that being said, we kind of find out that Loki is not alone at all. We do see different characters, and we do get hinted at the idea that these different characters have come from different countries around the world. Now, this is a callback, because remember, Nick was warned about the idea of continuing to build the Ultimates. Like, most of the countries ignored the original team. Steve Rogers, Iron Man, Thor, the Wasp, Giant Man. Like, you had most of the countries turn a blind eye to the original team because of what happened in 9/11. But they were warned, Nick was warned by other generals from other countries, do not continue to build more superhumans. Do not continue to build more teams of Ultimates, because if you do, sooner or later, you're going to have other countries try to answer back. And when they do, you're not going to like that answer at all. And right now, we're kind of seeing this answer. We're seeing the other countries sending out different metahumans coming together to attack America, to bring down the Ultimates. And with Black Widow now being a traitor, now we know that she told them how to bring down the Ultimates. And they're being led by Loki, the god of mischief. And so in a matter of minutes, less than 1 hour, America has fallen. The Ultimates has fallen. Loki and his new team of villains have officially won. And this is where we Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Ultimates 2 series, this is going to be our last video, but this is going to be the moment where we can say the Ultimates have now become Avengers because they are going to avenge America that has fallen to their enemies. Now, for me personally, this is kind of Nick Fury's fault, and let me explain why. So when it came to Nick, S.H.I.E.L.D., and also the American government, back in Ultimates 1, their main goal was just to put together a Ultimates team, and that was really it. A team used as a way to protect America, but to also go after super villains. But Ultimates 2 showed that Nick Fury was lying the entire time, that he really did plan to use the Ultimates as a way to attack other countries around the world, especially countries in the Middle East who are building up nuclear missiles that could be used against America down the road. Now, when it came to different people of the world, they told Nick, hey man, you gotta stop. Like, listen, we allowed you, America, to go ahead and build the Ultimates because of what happened on 9/11. But here you are now creating more different kinds of super beings to use for different operations around the world. If you continue down this path, sooner or later, you're going to have different countries coming together to stop you guys, to bring you guys down. And Nick took that warning and said, whatever, and continue on and began to use different members of the Ultimates to attack different facilities around the world in different countries, nuclear facilities. And really, we saw that at the very beginning of our last video, where you actually had the Ultimates go into a country in the Middle East to shut down that nuclear facility. But here's the thing, because as we dive into today's storyline, we do pick up with that exact moment once again. But this time, we shift our focus over to a young boy known as Abdul. Now, when it comes to Abdul, he's very upset with the idea that America, that the Ultimates came into his country and shut down their nuclear facility. And he says, what rights do they have to come into our country and do that? Because let's not forget, America also has nuclear weapons, and they are continuing to build those nuclear weapons. So how in the world is it okay for them to have it, but not us? And so when it comes to Abdul, he wants to get revenge for America coming into his country illegally. Now, while riding away on the back of a truck, he does meet a young man who says he does have something that could possibly help Abdul get revenge against the Ultimates, especially Captain America. Now, a few days after that moment, we do jump over to France, and we do pick up with a special meeting taking place in the past. And this shows, when it comes to this meeting, that you did have different countries begin to work together to build a new super team as a way to use against America, better known as the Liberators. And we saw them at the tail end of our last video. Now, here's the thing about the Liberators. Each member comes from a different country around the world. Now, China, they are the only country that went out of their way to send over 2 people to join the Liberators. The first would be Crimson Dynamo, their own version of Iron Man. And then you have the Abomination, their own version of the Hulk. Now, Russia has sent over their own version of Thor, better known as Perun. Now, North Korea had their own version of Quicksilver, better known as Hurricane. Syria has sent over their version of the Wasp, and that would be Swarm. Now, when it comes to France, they also sent someone over who's very similar to Jamie Madrox, and that would be the Schizoid Man. Now, the last person to actually join the Ultimates was the Colonel. But we saw the Colonel just a moment ago. It is Abdul. Abdul went through a different super soldier program, but being the only person after Steve Rogers to be able to take the serum and actually survive and become a super soldier. But he now becomes the leader of the team. And so you had all these different countries come together to say, we need this team to bring down America, to bring America to its knees, but to also get rid of their superhero team as well. But now we are able to jump to the present day, where we do pick up with the Liberators. Now for them, they had officially won. They brought down S.H.I.E.L.D. They brought down America. They brought down the Ultimates, and they were also able to capture Nick Fury as well. For them, it is officially over. Now, something I do want to mention is that Loki is also part of the team as well. Now, here's the thing. Loki was working in the shadows as a way to help the team out, to make sure they were able to pull everything off. But let's not forget, there are also two traitors to the Ultimates as well who are helping out the Liberators. And that will be Hank Pym and also Black Widow. And speaking of Black Widow, we have to remember that she was with Iron Man when things had popped off. Now, when it comes to Black Widow and Iron Man, they were engaged. Like, Iron Man was very in love with her, to the point where he gave her her own iron suit. But that iron suit is going to save Tony's life right here, because when he gave her the iron suit, he also gave her a wave of nanites in her bloodstream that allowed her to control the suit. But here's the catch. He's the one who can control the nanites. And so he was able to tell them to shut down her body, to give her a brain injury. But then he also gets a bottle of liquor and hits her right in the head to knock her out. And once he does that, he's all like, okay, you know what? It's time for me to get back to work. It's time for me to go into my workshop, and time for me to begin to save the Ultimates. But now we have to jump over to Hawkeye. Now, when it comes to Hawkeye, in our last video, after watching his entire family be killed off, well, he was taken in as a hostage, and they began to torture him, hoping that he would share all the different kinds of secrets about America, S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick, and anything else on his mind. But now it's time for him to escape. Now, he's tied up, but he says, you guys should have taken my fingernails, because I can use those as a weapon. And so he does. And he was able to kill every single person in that room. And once he's out of his binds, a bunch of more soldiers barge in with guns. But they all die just like that. And now Hawkeye is able to escape from this facility. But now we have to jump over to Steve Rogers. Now, when it comes to Steve Rogers, he was locked up in our last video because the Ultimates plus Nick believed that it was Steve who had killed off the family of Hawkeye, who had kidnapped Hawkeye, not knowing the man was innocent. It was Black Widow. But anyways, you have few members of the Liberators on their way over to his cell to bring him over to the Colonel, because the Colonel wants to be the one to kill off Steve Rogers, except they have no idea that Steve Rogers has been released from his binds, has been released from his cells by the Wasp. And so as soon as they walk in and they were able to capture her, well, he gets up and says, let go of my girlfriend. And we already know that this man plans on beating them down. But now we have to jump over to Thor. Now, let's not forget, Thor was also locked up in previous videos of our coverage over Ultimates 2. Really, he was locked up back in Volume 1 of Ultimates 2 because he had supposedly attacked a group of police officers who were trying to stop a protest. Now, here's the thing, because after he had supposedly did that, the Ultimates stepped in, fought him, defeat him, and locked him up. But you had Thor say, guys, we're being played here by my evil brother Loki. But nobody believes that Thor, one, has a brother, and two, that Thor is the god of thunder. And here is the reason why. So when it comes to the Ultimate Marvel Universe, the original one, it was built in a way where it says, hey, think about the real world. Think about our world. What would happen if heroes had appeared in our worlds? And so when it comes to Thor, they don't believe that he is the god of thunder. They believe that he is a mentally ill patient that had escaped from his brother, stole his brother's tech to become Thor, because Loki had also pretended to be a scientist who was working on some new technology that would allow someone to be a very powerful person like Thor was. Every power Thor had came from tech that he stole from his supposed brother. But no one knows it was Loki just playing mind games. But you have Thor sitting in his cells begging for help, begging for his father to finally help him, to get him out of there so that he'll be able to stop Loki. Now, by the time you have Steve Rogers and the Wasp being able to take down a few soldiers that were sent in by the Liberators to bring Steve over to the Colonel, well, you have the Wasp realize they should also free Thor. Thor can help them take down the Liberators, except when they go over to Thor's cell, Homeboy disappeared, and so we're left to wonder, did Odin finally step in and help Thor out? But we have no idea for the moment. Now we have to shift our focus back onto the Liberators. Now, they were able to find the president. He was just hiding on Air Force One, just flying around the country, just hoping that something would pop up that could hopefully save the country so that he'll be able to land, but to also resume his day. But unfortunately, the entire country has been taken over. But either way, he is found by the Liberators. Now you're probably wondering, hey, Fresh, we should know that America has allies. Where are they at? They can't help out. And the reason why? Because the Liberators told the allies of America, if you try to step in, we will use the nuclear missiles that America has as a way to attack your country. We will blow you up. And that's huge because let's not forget, there's Captain Britain, Captain Italy, Captain Spain. Those characters could help out. But they now can't go into America because if they do, their country could possibly be bombed. But getting back over to Steve Rogers and the Wasp, you have the two characters trying to sneak into the White House. They're trying to at least secure the White House, but to also get Nick Fury back and a few members of the Ultimates who are with him. Now, here's the thing. They do go in there thinking that, okay, we are about to enter another battle, but they don't. And the reason why? Because Hawkeye is already there. He cleared the room out. He was able to save Nick, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver, and also Betty Ross as well. But here comes the next problem. One of the soldiers that Hawkeye had attacked did not die. He survived. And so he warned the Liberators. And they sent in another wave of soldiers to attack the Ultimates in the White House. Now, y'all, we have to jump over to Iron Man because this is going to lead into a big moment for Iron Man. One of my favorite moments for Iron Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, here's the thing. Iron Man is wearing an older suit, and so his staff believes that he is trying to use that suit as a way to fight against the Liberators. But he says, no, there's no way that this suit will give me the chance to actually take down one of their members. I need an upgrade. I need something bigger. And so he flies into space. He goes to his space station to get something else that he has been working on. But y'all, before we are able to see that big moment, we have to shift over to another character who has one of the best moments of the book, another big moment in this book. Now, at first, it may seem like he is just a random guy. And this random guy does get squished by one of the robots that are being used by the Liberators. Except that robot doesn't realize that he had just stepped on Bruce Banner. Now, let's not forget, the world believes that Bruce Banner is dead because he was supposed to be killed off after killing 800 people in Manhattan. They dropped a nuke on him. The Ultimates at first believe it actually worked, that he had died, but in reality, he survived and he was hiding this entire time. But now he's back in New York. Someone just stepped on him and he does transform right into the Hulk and he is ready to go. But now we have to jump into the next chapter. Now, here's the thing, y'all. Here is the thing about this chapter. It is literally just our heroes fighting against the Liberators, trying their best to take them down. But our heroes are struggling against them. Now, when it comes to Mark Millar, he does not spend that much time showing our heroes struggling. And yes, there are one-on-one battles happening everywhere. You have the Hulk fighting against Abomination. You have Steve Rogers fighting against the Colonel. You have the Wasp fighting against the Swarm. You have Quicksilver going up against Hurricane. And yes, our heroes are struggling at first. But Mark Millar says no, this new team, the Liberators, they're new. They're still trying to learn how to be a great team. But the Ultimates have been a team for a while now. They have been heroes for a while now. And so our heroes know what to do to help them win a battle against their opponents. And so now our heroes turn the tables against the Liberators. Now, the first battle I do want to talk about will be Quicksilver going up against Hurricane. Now, here's the thing, because at first you have Hurricane actually thinking that she's on the same level as Quicksilver, but you didn't have Quicksilver tell her, no, I can tell that you are nowhere near my level. And the reason why, because you haven't even reached Mach 10, Mach 5. And so because of that, your speed is nowhere near my level of speed. And so you have Quicksilver just grab her and he goes beyond her limit. And her body cannot handle that limit at all. And so we begin to see her body literally disintegrate right in front of us to show that Quicksilver was on a whole other level. Now, the Wasp, she also gets a big moment in this book. Now, when it comes to the Wasp, in Ultimates 1 and Ultimates 2, most of the team, really most of the people of America looked at her as the weakest member of the team. Like, what can she do to actually help the team out? Well, you see, Hank Pym gave her something, a small sample of his giant man serum, and she takes it. And so she grows really big. And so when it comes to her battle against Swarm, well, she just stomps on her, killing her off just like that and moving on with her day. But now we have to jump over to Iron Man. Now, when it comes to Iron Man, let's not forget, Homeboy went into space to get something that could most likely help him take down the Liberators, to take down the soldiers who are fighting alongside with the Liberators. And that is what I call his Megazord. But he does actually have a code name for it, and he calls it Iron Man 6. But either way, you do have Iron Man just come down out of the sky with this huge weapon, just blasting folks left and right. And so the Ultimates now have the Liberators on the run. Now, when it comes to Hulk's battle, it's not as big as the others for me because it's the Hulk. It's Ultimate Hulk. We already knew that he would find a way to win. But if he does find a way to win, most likely, if you are the one fighting against him, you are going to die. And so when it comes to the Abomination, he's killed off. You have the Hulk just break his head right off his body and move on with his day to help out the rest of the Ultimates to save the city. Now, I want to focus on the battle between Steve Rogers and also the Colonel, because when it comes to their battle, it really shows that the Colonel is nowhere near the same level as Steve Rogers. Now, at first, he is able to get a few blows on Steve Rogers, but after a while, Steve is able to get the edge over him. And for me personally, it's the book saying, listen, the Colonel is a super soldier, but so is Steve Rogers. And Steve has been a super soldier much longer, and he knows how to win different kinds of fights like this one right here. And so even though you do have the Colonel being able to get a few blows on Steve, Steve is still the stronger one here, and Steve is able to actually win. Now, there is a moment where you had the Colonel try to cheat, but you didn't have Steve being able to get some help from the Hulk. And then after that help comes, you didn't have Steve being able to go ahead and kill off the Colonel just like that. But now we have to jump over to Loki. Now, Loki is the last member standing here, and Loki is really powerful. And when it comes to the Ultimates, no one on their team can actually go toe to toe with Loki. Maybe the Scarlet Witch, but even then, she can easily lose to him. And he knows that. But she says, listen, I'm not going to try to fight you. Instead, I'm going to use my abilities to help our odds here, to bring someone over here who can most likely stop you. And Loki knows who she is talking about. Ultimate Thor. He appears and he is ready to go one-on-one with his brother Loki. And so now we get into the final battle between Thor and Loki. Now, I really want to focus more on Loki here for a moment, because when it comes to Loki, we have to remember that yes, he is the god of mischief, which means that he is able to play with reality to a certain level. And so when it comes to Loki, he's trying his best to continue to play mind games on Thor. But the problem is for Loki, Thor can no longer be tricked so easily. Thor now knows what's real and what's fake. He is able to break through all the different kinds of illusions that Loki is trying to throw at him. Now, when it comes to Loki, he knows that he needs some backup. And so out of nowhere, we do see all these different kind of creatures from Asgardian mythos coming into Earth and now helping Loki fight against the Ultimates and Thor. And this is really a big moment for the Ultimates, because the Ultimates the entire time did not believe that Thor was actually the god of thunder, that he was actually from Asgard. There was actually a Loki out there playing mind games. But now with them seeing Thor and Loki and also all these different kinds of creatures, they now believe that Thor is really the god of thunder. Now, when it comes to Odin, he's on Thor's side here. He wants to make sure that Loki does lose. And so you have Odin send in forces from Asgard to back up Thor, the Ultimates, when it comes to fighting against the forces of Loki. And so by the end of the battle, you have Thor being able to once again defeat his evil brother Loki. Now, the story does wrap up very quickly, where you do have the Ultimates begin to say, you know what, it's time for us to no longer have connections to S.H.I.E.L.D. You see, when it comes to Steve Rogers and the rest of the Ultimates, they realize that this was Nick Fury's fault. The idea of working alongside with the American government and being used as a military force brought this upon themselves, brought this upon America. But also you have Steve Rogers and the rest of the Ultimates saying, we cannot just stand up for America. We have to stand up for the entire world. And so this is the Ultimates saying goodbye from being controlled by Nick Fury. But the best part of the book is where you have Hawkeye being able to get revenge against Black Widow. Because remember, he saw her right before he was taken away after his family was killed off. And so he went to a nearby hospital. He found her and she tries her best to get away, but unfortunately she does not. And you have Black Widow be killed off by Hawkeye in a matter of seconds. And for him, it's the best thing ever, because at least he was able to revenge his family. And this is actually going to lead to Hawkeye changing completely in later books down the road, especially Ultimates 3. But with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Like I said in some of our other videos, I kind of want to go back and recover some different stories when it came to the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And so we already covered Ultimates 1, Ultimates 2, but now sadly it is time for us to cover Ultimates 3. Now, for most fans of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, this was the worst Ultimate story out of the original trilogy that came out before Ultimatum. Now, the first two were written by Mark Millar, but the last one was written by Jeff Loeb. And honestly, Jeff Loeb is a great writer, but like I said, this is technically the worst ultimate story. And really, it's not all bad, it's just certain parts of the story that kind of had fans very upset. And you'll see what I mean as we go through today's video. Now, the opening pages of this book is, well, it's something, because we actually do pick up with the Ultimates watching a sex tape of Black Widow and Iron Man. Now remember, back in Ultimates 2, those two characters were actually dating, but we did learn that Black Widow was actually a traitor who was trying to bring down the American government. But of course, she died back in Ultimates 2, but Tony really did like her. Now, I did kind of had a small problem with the opening page of this book. And the reason why, because back in Ultimates 2, after Black Widow had died, Tony had moved on. But in the opening page of this book, we actually see that he's having a hard time dealing with the death of Black Widow, but also be portrayed by her as well. But then out of nowhere, our heroes are then attacked by Ultimate Venom. Now, this is not the original Ultimate Venom. As you may know, the original Ultimate Venom only appeared in Ultimate Spider-Man comics. But on top of that, the way he is speaking right now in this book, where he's actually able to put together some complete sentences. The other Ultimate Venom could not do that at all. Really, the only thing he could say was just Parker over and over again. So that was our first big clue that this is not the Ultimate Venom. This is something else. Either way, you do have the Ultimates trying their best to fight against it, but unfortunately, they are losing that battle. Now, really, in the middle of the battle, you actually have Black Panther get thrown away. Now, if you saw my Ultimate Captain America video, you already know that Black Panther is not technically on the Ultimates. That matter of fact, he went back over to Wakanda, and Steve Rogers was pretending to be Black Panther for a short period of time to throw Nick Fury off. And so right now, Steve is missing, and we just saw Black Panther get thrown across the city, which should tell you that's not the Black Panther at all. Either way, you didn't have Thor and Valkyrie arrive just in time to actually take out this fake Venom. But now it's time for us to get into one of the things that fans did not truly care for. The idea of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver actually being in some kind of incest relationship. Let me explain. So in the first two volumes of Ultimates, we were kind of getting hints to the idea that they were in some kind of incestual relationship, but it wasn't not flat out told to us. But this book right here says no. They are actually in love with one another. To them, they're boyfriend and girlfriend, even though they are brother and sister. Now, for most fans of Marvel Comics and Steve Rogers in the book, it's kind of like, hey, that's not okay at all. That's disgusting. That's wrong. Like, why would you do that? And you have the Wasp come in and say, well, you know what? It's love. And honestly, love always wins. Now, something else we should talk about is the idea that, well, Steve Rogers and the Wasp used to date back in the earlier parts of the Ultimates, but unfortunately they broke up. And the reason why, because the Wasp wanted to get back with her ex-husband, Hank Pym. Now, as we all know, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Hank Pym was way more aggressive and abusive than he is in the main Marvel Universe. And so it left fans kind of upset about the idea of her going back to her abusive husband. Now, she does try her best to have a bond with Steve Rogers, but he's still very upset about the breakup. Now, after that, you then have the Wasp go see Hank Pym to kind of tell him everything that's going on with the Ultimates. Now, for example, it's kind of like Tony Stark has now become an alcoholic. Like, this man is drinking more because the idea of the death of the Black Widow. You also have the idea that Steve Rogers and her are not really able to work together, and Hawkeye has now become reckless after the death of his family back in Ultimates 2. Now, while she's trying to tell Hank Pym all these different things, that's when she realized that he's not actually talking back to her. And so she goes over to him to see that apparently he has overdosed on some kind of medication. But now we have to jump over to the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Now, this is the moment that begins the downfall for the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And I'll explain more as we go through the rest of this book. Now, we do pick up with the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver out on a date with one another. But then out of nowhere, somebody begins to shoot at them. Now, you do have Quicksilver doing his best to protect the Scarlet Witch. But the problem is, though, the last bullet to be fired goes through his hand and does hit the Scarlet Witch. Now, there is a moment where he's just hoping that she'll survive, but unfortunately, by the end of the first chapter, you have this random doctor appear, which at first I thought would be Donald Blake, but it's not Donald Blake, tell Quicksilver that, hey, I'm sorry, but your sister is dead. Now, as we dive into the second chapter, we do pick up with Hawkeye going after Spider-Man. And the reason why, because our heroes still believe that that was the actual Venom. And they do know that Spider-Man had fought against Venom in the past. And so you have Hawkeye, well, he's going at it the wrong way because, like I said earlier, after Hawkeye's family died back in Ultimates 2, the guy has become more reckless. And so this guy is not really trying to talk to Spider-Man in a very nice way. It's more of like, hey, I'm going to beat you down and then you're going to tell me what I need to know about Venom. But the problem is, at the end of the section, you have Steve Rogers appear and you have Steve tell Hawkeye, hey, I'm going to need you to go ahead and go back to the mansion. Now, for Hawkeye, besides trying to get information about Venom, he was also looking for the Black Panther because the Black Panther got thrown across the city and no one has seen him since that moment. But you have Steve say, hey, listen, I'm second in charge of the team and I'm telling you right now to go ahead and go back to the base. I'll find Black Panther, leave Spider-Man alone, and let's go on our way. And so really, for Hawkeye, this whole idea of coming after Peter Parker was technically pointless. Now we jump over to the Wasp, and when we do, we see the Wasp was able to get Hank Pym over to the medical room, except around that same time, you have Quicksilver run in with the dead body of the Scarlet Witch. And so this is the moment where the Wasp learns that, well, the Scarlet Witch is officially dead. Now, for the Wasp, she's trying her best to calm down Quicksilver, saying, listen, we're going to figure out who killed your sister. But then he says, my father was right. I should have stayed with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And that is the moment there is an explosion at the mansion. And that leads into a huge battle between the Ultimates and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now, Magneto is not there in the battle. He is somewhere else, but we do get a lot of good matchups in this actual section. And really, this for me personally is one of the bright moments of the Ultimates 3 book. Like I said though, it's still the worst out of all three, but there are some bright moments though, like this one. The battle is pretty cool. The artwork for me is somewhat cool as well. Now with all that being said though, in the middle of the battle, you have Iron Man just fly out of nowhere and take the Blob somewhere else. Now that part of the battle is going to be really important later on in this book. But now we have to shift our focus over to Magneto and Quicksilver. And we cannot forget that Magneto and Quicksilver don't actually like one another. Really, to Magneto, he looks at Quicksilver as a disgrace and always trying to get rid of him. But either way, you do have the two guys talking. Now, this is Magneto saying, this is a time for family to be together. It's time for us to take the dead body of your sister, my daughter, back over to the Savage Land so that we are able to begin our work to figure out who had killed the Scarlet Witch. Now, at first, for Quicksilver, he does not want to go with his father because, again, his dad has one, got him shot twice in the kneecaps, and two, his dad had told him that you are a disgrace to me. But right now, it's Quicksilver saying, fine, I am going to listen to my father. And so he goes out into the battle between the Ultimates and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and grabs each member of the Brotherhood to get them the heck out of the base of the Ultimates. Now, our heroes know that it was Quicksilver who went out of his way to save the different members of the Brotherhood, but now they're kind of wondering what in the world to do next. But then they realize they have another visitor, and that would be Wolverine. He says, hey guys, listen, you got bigger problems coming your way. Now, this begins the process of us learning something that most fans did not really care for when it came to Ultimates 3, but especially the character of Wolverine in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. So let me explain what went down in the third chapter of Ultimates 3. So after you had Wolverine arrive at the mansion of Tony Stark, or the Ultimates as well, you didn't have Wolverine tell everyone that it was Quicksilver who had actually called Magneto here. Now, when it comes to the Ultimates, they can't believe in the idea that Quicksilver would call Magneto here for the death of the Scarlet Witch, because again, there's bad blood between the two of them. But Logan says, no, he did. And bam, look what happened. Magneto appeared. Now, for Hawkeye, he does tick off Wolverine, but let's not forget that Hawkeye is a tad bit reckless and really to the point where he's okay with the idea of dying because he believes if he does die, he'll join his family in the afterlife. But either way, though, when it comes to Wolverine, he wants to tell the Ultimates a story. The idea that the Scarlet Witch might not be the daughter of Magneto, but instead his own daughter. And so now we have to jump back in time where we actually pick up with a younger Wolverine who's trying his best to survive in the mountains. And really, he's trying to survive in Wundagore Mountains. Now, while out there, like I said earlier, he was trying to survive, but unfortunately, it did seem like he might not make it until he was found by a young woman, better known as Magda. Now, of course, this is Magneto's wife. I don't know if she was his wife or just his girlfriend. Either way, they were together. But she did find a young Wolverine who did seem like he was on the verge of dying out there in the mountains. And so the two of them sat down and began to make love to one another once she was able to bring him back to better health. But while you have the two characters making love, well, Magneto came home, and Magneto was not very happy about the idea of seeing his lady in bed with another man, and so he sent Wolverine out of the house, flying back into the wilderness. Now for Wolverine, that would not be the last time he actually saw Magneto. And so now we jump forward in time where we actually pick up with Magneto trying to establish a base in the Savage Land. Now, something else I do want to mention is that when it comes to Wolverine in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, he used to be a bad guy. He used to be part of the Brotherhood, but then later on, he was able to join the X-Men thanks to Charles Xavier and especially thanks to Jean Grey. either way, when it came to Wolverine, we do pick up at the point where he is joining the Brotherhood. Now, for Logan, he believes that Magneto had forgotten about him with the whole idea of sleeping with Magna behind the back of Magneto. Now, you have Wolverine telling us that for Magneto, he always hated his kids for different reasons. The main one was, though, because they were constant reminders that he has slept with a human. You see, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Magneto hated humans way more than his main Marvel Universe counterpart did. But on top of that, the Scarlet Witch looks just like her mother, and so she is a constant reminder of the idea that he slept with a human. Now, when Wolverine joined the Brotherhood, Magneto wanted Quicksilver gone. He believed way back then that Quicksilver was basically worthless to have around, and so he asked Logan to kill him off. And Logan was going to when you had the twins by themselves, except the Scarlet Witch used her abilities to protect her brother. Now, in the Savage Land, you have wild dinosaurs. In this reality, it was not really explained where the dinosaurs came from until this point right here. Because of the powers of the Scarlet Witch being able to warp reality, she brought dinosaurs into this reality. Now, on top of that, Wolverine was able to get away, but he came back around to watch the twins. And when he did, well, he realized that they were in love with each other way back then, because for Quicksilver, he was abandoned by his mother. His father hates him, and technically the same for the Scarlet Witch, but a tad bit lighter hate from Magneto towards her. But either way though, they found love in each other because their parents kind of, well, abandon them in their own ways. Now, of course, it's still wrong, but you have Logan there watching them become a couple at that exact moment. Now, at the end of his story, he does tell us that he believes that he could be the father of Quicksilver and also the Scarlet Witch. But as we all know, at the tail end of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, we were told that he is not their father at all. Now, by the end of his story, we could technically say that that was technically pointless because we did not really get anything out of it. Like, yes, we now know in the possibility that Magneto might be in the Savage Land, but at the same time, all we got was more evidence to prove that the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were madly in love with one another. Either way, you now have the Ultimates say they should split up into two teams. The first team will go after Magneto. The second team will stay behind to examine the crime scene of where the Scarlet Witch had died at. Now, right after you have the first team leave, you have team number 2 stay behind to begin to examine the crime scene of where the Scarlet Witch had died at. But the problem is right now, it's just the Wasp and Iron Man. And at first, she believes that she is actually talking to Iron Man, but in reality, it's not Iron Man at all. It seems like he has been replaced by some kind of robot or cyborg because he does take off his face plate. And when he does, he reveals that he is completely a robot. And the question is right now, where is the real Tony Stark? But now we have to jump over to the first team. Now, to the first team, when they do arrive in the Savage Land to find Magneto, well, they are actually confronted by Shauna and also Kazar of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, unfortunately, these two characters, we're only going to learn a tad bit of information about them for this story arc, and really for the entire time they're in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, in the opening pages for issue number 4, we do get another flashback where we actually pick up with Charles Xavier and Magneto and younger versions of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver heading over to the Savage Land. Now, this flashback is really more trying to establish the idea that Magneto wanted to go to the Savage Land to hopefully find a home for all mutants across the world to actually go to. The problem is, well, something hit one of their wings on their plane and caused their plane to crash into the Savage Land. Now, after they did crash into the Savage Land, they were confronted by Khazar and Shauna's people who lived in the Savage Land, a bunch of native people. Now, as we get back to the present day, we actually do learn that after Magneto had crashed in the Savage Land alongside with Charles Xavier and the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, well, he did invite more and more mutants into the Savage Land. But the problem was Magneto began to kill off Khazar and Shauna's people to basically say, hey, I know I'm new to your land here, but I'm going to go ahead and take over the entire area and just go ahead and kill you guys off. And so for Khazar and also Shauna, they're really down with the idea of helping out the Ultimates to take down Magneto. Now we jump over to the Ultimates mansion where we do see the Wasp right now still freaking out about, well, seeing a robot version of Iron Man trying to attack her. Now she is saved at the very last second by Captain America, who was supposed to be on the second team staying behind to actually investigate the crime scene of the Scarlet Witch. But this is not Captain America. This is another robot pretending to be Steve Rogers. And luckily for the Wasp, she was saved by Hank Pym, who is currently using his Ant-Man gear to save her life. But then he tells her, hey, I'm gonna need you to shrink down and come with me because I think I'm at fault for everything that's going on right now with the Ultimates. Now I want to shift our focus back over to the other Ultimates team, the ones who are in the Savage Land. And here's the reason why. So with those Ultimates, you currently have them right now trying to find Magneto. Unfortunately, they can't find him. They find the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So like Sabretooth, Juggernaut, and also Mastermind and Pyro. Now at first, the action scenes in this chapter alone is great until we get to the Valkyrie and Mastermind part of the battle. So let me explain. So first, I want to talk more about Valkyrie. You see, when it comes to Valkyrie, the last time we saw her was back in Ultimates 2. Now, back in that series right there, she had no abilities at all. And the reason why, because, well, she was part of a team called Defenders. And when it came to the Defenders, their goal was to become heroes, but no one on their team had any kind of special training or abilities at all. But then at the start of Ultimates 3, out of nowhere, she reappeared with powers. And we're kind of left to wonder where she got those powers from. And honestly, we don't get those answers until after Ultimatum. Either way, when it comes to Mastermind has the ability to play with your senses as a way to play with your mind. So he can make you believe that you are currently seeing something or tasting something or even even hearing something. He can change reality around you to make you believe it's actually real, but in reality, it's not real. And so for Valkyrie, she currently believes that she's back in her room right now, powerless. Now, here's the thing. This is a really messed up scene because right now she is defenseless. She cannot protect herself. But you have Pyro and Mastermind actually thinking about assaulting her in a very negative way. I mean, all assault is bad, but that's the worst kind of assault right there. And so it gets really awkward again for Ultimates 3. Now, you do have the Ultimates being able to find Magneto. Really, you have Thor being the one. And honestly, you have Thor believing that he can bring down Magneto by himself. You know, guys, I love this scene right here because you have Magneto putting Thor in his place. Kind of like, hey, listen. You could try use your hammer against me, but your hammer has a special kind of iron inside of it where I am able to use my powers on your hammer to make sure that you cannot use it against me. Now, you do have Quicksilver tell his father hey, listen, Dad, they're not going to stop at all. They came here to stop you, but they also came here for the body of the Scarlet Witch. So if you want them to leave, you're gonna have to bring them down pretty hard. And for Magneto, he is okay with that idea. But now we have to shift our focus back over to Hank Pym and also the Wasp. But now, currently, they're underground Ultimate's mansion, and with them being underground, they find a secret lab. Inside that lab, they see a guy wearing the yellow jacket outfit. Now, in the Ultimate Marvel universe, nobody wore the yellow jacket outfit. Hank Pym was only Ant-Man and Giant Man. But this person right now who is wearing the actual outfit is building more and more robots to pretend to be different members of the Ultimates. Now for the Wasp, she does ask Hank Pym, who is that guy and what is he doing? And you have Hank say, oh, so you see, that is our son. Now, getting into the final chapter for Ultimates 3, this is where we technically learn that Ultron was behind everything. Let me explain. So, back in Ultimates 2, Hank Pym got fired from S.H.I.E.L.D. And so, to try to get himself back into S.H.I.E.L.D., he offered Nick Fury the idea of Ultron, robots that could be used in battle against other countries who may be enemies against America. The problem was Nick Fury wanted nothing to do with Hank Pym, including his Ultron robots. But while you had Hank Pym talking to Nick Fury, well, the Scarlet Witch had walked by one of the Ultrons, the main one. And when she did that, she kind of used her hex powers on accident on the robot, which began the whole idea of the robot Ultron falling in love with the Scarlet Witch. It's very similar to how Vision and the Scarlet Witch were a couple in the main Marvel universe. But in this reality, it's Ultron, a robot, falling in love with the Scarlet Witch. But then later on, Ultron realized that she did not love him back the same way he did, because she was in love with Quicksilver. And so Ultron decided that if he could not have her, no one could. And so that is why Ultron had killed off the Scarlet Witch. Now, Ultron's next goal is to continue to make more and more robots as a way to replace the actual Ultimates. Really, he believes that machines should go ahead and rule over the earth, over humans and mutants. Now, when it comes to Wasp and Hank Pym, they do know that Yellow Jacket, or Ultron here, is about to basically take all his robots with him over to the Savage Land to fight against the Ultimates, but to also fight against the Brotherhood. Now, while you had Ultron getting ready to leave, you had Wasp and also Hank Pym being able to free Tony Stark, who was actually being held prisoner by Ultron. But getting back over to the Savage Land, we do learn that yes, the Black Panther is not actually there. It was Captain America pretending to be the Black Panther. And really, we saw that back in our coverage over Captain America Annual #1, where technically you had Steve Rogers helping out the Black Panther to get back over to Wakanda, and he pretended to be the Black Panther to cover up for T'Challa. Either way, it is revealed to everyone that the Black Panther is not there at all and has been gone for a while. But shifting our focus back over to Valkyrie, who's still being played with by Mastermind, well, you did have her being able to wake up. But the only reason why she was able to wake up from his control is because whoever gave her the abilities told her, like, hey, I didn't give you these powers so that you can die so easily. Wake up and get back out there and fight against your enemies. And so because of that mysterious person, Valkyrie was able to get back up and take out Mastermind, but also take out Pyro as well in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Now, this begins the process of everything getting wrapped up very quickly. So let me explain. So you do have Ultron and his ultimate robots appear at the actual Savage Land. And so you have them fighting against the Brotherhood, but you also have the Brotherhood fighting against the Ultimates. It is a three-way battle that does get wrapped up very quickly. And so we are able to move on to the moment where you have the Wasp talk to Magneto. You have the Wasp tell Magneto that it was actually Ultron who had killed off the Scarlet Witch. Now, like I said earlier, Magneto in this reality really does hate the humans in the Ultimate Marvel universe. And so even though he just learned that it was a machine that had killed off his daughter, in his mind, he's kind of like, and so what? Because humans made those machines, which means technically my daughter died by the hands of the human race. And so for Magneto, he's still upset with the Ultimates. But then that is the moment you have Hawkeye try to take out Magneto. Now, when he does try to shoot Magneto, we're left to believe that this could be the moment Magneto is going to die. No, because you didn't have Quicksilver being able to arrive just in time to protect Magneto, but unfortunately, Quicksilver dies at this exact moment. And so now to Magneto, he had lost both of his children. And this actually leads into Ultimatum, which for me is an even worse storyline than this one. And well, really, this is still bad because of a lot of bad things happening Ultimates 3, but Ultimatum is a very close second to this one. Either way, this moment right here leads into Ultimatum. Because now for Magneto, he lost both of his children. And so now the humans, especially the Ultimates, they have to pay the ultimate price. And of course, that means Ultimatum. But the very last page, we actually see Doctor Doom holding the head of Ultron 3 days later. And we do learn that it was Doctor Doom who had messed with Ultron, who had made Ultron do all those different things, but made Ultron believe it was because of the Scarlet Witch. And so this leads into Ultimatum, but we already covered the whole entire story arc of Ultimatum, including the tie-ins. But yeah, this wraps up the original trilogy of the Ultimates in the Ultimate Marvel universe. So guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.